Hi, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms where I give you a heads up about upcoming shows and which date and time they will be aired. If you go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com, you can find links to the shows, MP3 files which you can download, or links to your favorite platform like iTunes, Spreaker, SoundCloud, and all other major sources. You can find information for upcoming and past talk show appearances as well as new book projects at MarlenePardo.com. You can also purchase books and merchandise there. And you can visit my author page on Amazon at Marlene Pardo Pellicer. Due to popular demand, I'm narrating my True Believer stories that I've collected throughout the years in a new series called Supernatural Storytime. You can find links at supernaturalstorytime.com. If you are into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate some of those at Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If you would like to read noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird, you can visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at MiamiGhostChronicles.com. I do want to thank you all for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi everybody, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural. How is everybody doing today? Good, I hope. I'm doing very, very well. One of the reasons is because I have a fantastic guest that has been here before. And this gentleman, he is, as a matter of fact, I was telling him right now, he's a great storyteller. As a guest, he's got excellent stories. And he's also an author of books, and he hails from Kentucky, which I was telling him, you guys got so much haunted and paranormal stuff going on. But anyway, who I have with us tonight is Steve Asher. Now, Steve is a paranormal researcher. He's also a freelance writer and artist. And he has previously he worked for 10 years in law enforcement and as a correctional officer. And he's traveled worldwide. He's a native of Kentucky. Now, he's written 4 books. 2 of them just came out this year, which is the ones that we want to talk to him about, which is the Haunting of St. Vincent Academy. And then he's also got The Great Mud Flood Conspiracy, the thing that we all got wrong. So let me bring Steve on, and we're going to take off straight into that, because believe me, I've talked to Steve before about these books, and they're absolutely fascinating. How are you doing today, Steve?
Hey, I'm doing swell. I appreciate you having me back on.
No, absolutely. It is my pleasure. Like I said, you have not only your own personal experiences, but there's so much fodder as far as hauntings and paranormal and so many interesting things going on in Kentucky. I mean, I've been to Kentucky, and but there's a wealth of information over there for the paranormal researcher. But anyway, let's get into these books that you both of which came out this year, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I had the St. Vincent's, the Hauntings of the St. Vincent's Academy.
Okay.
That come out only part of the year, and then maybe another. It wasn't really that long. It was maybe another month and a half, I think. The Great Mud Flood, the thing that we all forgot, came out.
Okay. Which one? Take us where you want to go. Which one do you want to go to St. Vincent's? If you could tell us about, because this haunting. These are true hauntings, ghost stories, right? As far as what's happened there, or can you tell us what is St. Vincent's Academy?
Okay. St. Vincent's Academy was founded. Okay, it's in Union County, Kentucky, which has Uniontown, Morganfield, places like that. Well, that was founded, I believe, 1812, and then 1820, I believe, the St. Vincent's Academy opened. And it had, to understand, this had been one of the first schools in that area, and they kind of just really, the towns and the little areas built up around the church, like a lot of other smaller towns.
Right.
Religion was a very large part of people's lives there, and it just was what it was. And luckily, the Catholic Church and stuff did a lot, in regards of different type of education, and they'd always had, 3 or 4 different sort of schools and lined up So it really was with the life's blood of that area. And the thing with St. Vincent's Academy, the book, is that it encompasses various buildings. Like there was the Higgins Learning Center, which we actually got to investigate. We physically went through, which is one of the chapters in the book. I wanted to make each book kind of slightly different. The first book, Hauntings of the West, or Hauntings of Texas State Penitentiary, was about a lot of people who served there, be it inmates or were just officers or whatever. The next book was which is the Western Hauntings of the Western Higgins side. Touched more on special needs people and people that, like some people go, well, an inmate, good, let them sit in there and rot forever. But then you think about special needs people, and these people have different needs. Some are criminally insane, some are just, special, and whatever. And so the third one, it touched on this orphanage, because there's different buildings had different lives, just like a lot of old buildings. And it had been spots had been for wayward mothers. There had been kind of like unwanted children, a lot of stuff like that. And this is no different to that rule. But so what I did was I included the schools, the outlying areas, which touched on some of the urban legends of the area, and including like the Hart brothers, which was basically America's serial killers. And I got some pretty cool accounts of ghostly activities about these guys, which I'll tell you more about in a second. But the way it worked is that, to answer the original question, yes, this is fiction based on true events. Right. So I changed certain locations and names and whatnot. Okay. And as usual, when you start playing around with people's faith, you've got to be respectful. It's not a smear for the Catholic Church. I have no problem with the Catholic Church to do anything. And that's the first thing people ask me, like, was there any abuse? Was there signs of? And people, I did not get one story like that.
You know what? People don't realize that back then, I mean, we look at things through our modern day sensibilities. And I'm not talking abuse, but, back then, like you said, that they would send here, widows, orphans, the criminally insane, the mentally insane. Yeah, they would just lump everybody together because was the best they could do. Okay. But we look at it sometimes through our modern day stuff, and we're like, my God. How could they send somebody
that's
there?
The thing. You can't. It's better than them freezing to death. It's better than them starving to death in the street. It's better than them being molested, beaten, or put into. Sometimes people take people with facial deformities and put them in circuses. All kinds of stuff. All kinds of stuff. So like you said, you have to look through the prism of the time. Exactly. You have to look at the sensibilities and the social morality of the time. But yeah, so anyway, and it touched on that, and it also had, like I said, the Higgins Learning Center, which at the end of its time became like a home for kind of like special needs adults, but it also had some children, as I understand, because in our investigations, we were getting the sounds of children and the activities of children, like playing with toys and laughing and giggling, all that stuff. So, but that's sort of the outside of it. And the thing is that makes a difference again, or difference in that book again, is the fact that we included one of our investigations, and it had quite a bit of activity in the building. And if you want, we can kind of go into some of that, or wherever you want to go with this.
Let me tell you something. First of all, absolutely, yeah. I mean, saying what the history is, it's understood that besides residual, there had to have been active hauntings there because of the nature of what happened in those walls. Despite the best intentions of whoever built this place, I know that a lot of times these places were short-staffed, so I'm sure a lot of things took place. But yeah, let's hear some of the interesting stories that you came across. And that you said this was built pre-Civil War, or was it built after the Civil War?
No. It basically the town was settled by these nuns. I believe it was these sisters. Oh my goodness, I don't have the paper in front of me. Something like the Sisters of the Blessed.
I know they have sometimes they have names that you're like, what?
But,
In my experience, usually they would do one of two things, or both eventually, either establish a school or a hospital. That's usually the way they would do that because...
Right. Yeah. And both are great ideas. Yeah. Both are great ideas. So, What happened was from the Advent, okay, they got the school set up, this and that. Everything was okay. They stayed very active until about the 1850s. Now, this is, of course, more or less around the times of the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the students then stayed home to help with family, or older kids or older young adults went off to war, and the other kids helped around the farm.
Right.
And there was an incident actually in that area where this is a very active area for the Civil War, because the Wabash Rivers, the convergence of the Wabash Rivers, connects with like the Ohio and comes on down, kind of borders the way the county borders with the next county up. So anyway, back during this time, there was a lot of civil war going on, and there was a story where this smaller farm, or like groups of farms, all like more or less stayed in their houses for a day because they were firing and shooting and killing and shooting up everything.
Okay.
And when people were trying to come out, somebody was sniping at the farmers.
Wow.
So they ended up staying there for a few days. And finally, for whatever reason, the man left or something happened to him. Finally, they creeped out, and they looked and says, "Oh my God, all the pigs are gone. All of this and that's gone. They stole our pigs, right?" So they're freaking out. And then they're starting to look around, and they're following footprints of the pig. And it's like, no, I think maybe they broke out because they were hungry. We hadn't been able to feed them for days. So hunger overtakes them. They push the fence, break it, and they're out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in looking around, they're hearing sounds of the pigs up in the high grass. I went, well, they ran down there probably to get water from the streams, or, those stupid pigs, right? So anyway, the guys say, we're going in. And you keep the pokes. The pokes were more or less bags that farmers would put pigs in.
Okay.
If somebody has a grandma or great grandma around, ask them about a pig and a poke. That's a thing, especially in the South. So anyway, they went up there, and they're looking around, and they're still hearing kind of these pigs, and they were trying to get one that kind of left from wherever it had been, and they slipped past the farmers, and they said, "Hey, get ready, they're coming through." And they thought, well, they're just all going to run and whatever. Well, they hear the woman start screaming her head off. So they're like, oh my God, what's going on? So the main guy says, hey, keep an eye out in case this is something going on. I'm running out, but give me the gun. He runs down, and the woman is just freaking out. Drop the bag. I was like, what are you doing? We're trying to... She couldn't talk. Eyes as big as saucers. And he's like, what is wrong with you? And pointed over to the pig. It had kind of ran back into its little cage, into its pen. It's like, why haven't you put the thing up? What's going on? The pig turned around, and it had what appeared to be a leg joint with a foot.
Oh.
So they all went up into these pigs, and what had happened was there had been a very big war, a very big battle, and there was like a lot of bodies were left.
Oh my God!
And
they were feeding on that.
Okay. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like Civil War surgeons. They're
Yes.
quick.
Oh my God! Yeah,
They're
they would do all these amputations and.
Right. Well, that's not even the worst part. Well, first of all, you find all these pigs and they're bloated. They're rolling in this. I mean, you can literally see. Have you ever seen like a baby in a mom's stomach kind of push, and you kind of say, well, it looks like an elbow. It looks like a foot. You can kind of see the limbs poking. They gorge themselves so much. But what was the worst part? There were screams. It was like, that sounds like a person. Sometimes when people fall into like a certain state, they'll go and look, he's dead, he's not going to make it.
Oh my God, somebody that they had thrown there that they thought was dead.
And they were feeding on this guy, which of course he died. Oh. And this is documented in the history. And I'm going, man, I mean, I thought my county was jacked up. This is insane. And it continued even before that time. Which, let me add to that, people can still hear the sound of squealing pigs and cries of men for help.
Oh my God, that's horrible.
Right, and that wasn't even a chapter. That was just the intro to the book. That wasn't even a chapter. So what happened we were talking about the Harp brothers. The Harp brothers, some people say that they were Englishmen. Other people said they were Scottish mercenaries loyal to the crown during the time of the colonial ages and stuff. Okay. So anyway, the people that did not want to keep being cool with the king, I know I'm throwing this very off the cuff, but cool with the king. But anyway, it was a thing where they would have these guys say, well, if they won't pay by choice, we'll make them pay by blood, or we'll make them pay by whatever. So these guys, not only did they were highwaymen, cutthroats, and all that, they had rape gangs, literally rape gangs.
Oh, wow.
And they would kidnap young women, sometimes very young, 7, 8 years old.
Oh, my God.
And the ones that they didn't kill or rape, they took them and added them to their party. So by the time they're 12 or 13, they don't even know where they're from. Almost a very Manson-esque vibe. So,
oh, my God.
And what happened beyond that, that's not even the worst part. Are you ready for the worst part?
Let's hear it. Why not? I'm like...
Okay, which let me go on this record. Rape is horrible. But this is a little bit more gruesome in the overall. The ones that they did decide to kill, they knew, well, hey, if there's no body, there's no crime. So they would take them, as I mentioned, the Wabash Rivers. They would set and cut them open, stuff their mouth, throats, and bellies full of rocks, throw them in the river. And usually the ones, sometimes the carriers would carry them out into deeper water, but sometimes not. It was not till a few years later that they were able to gather evidence against these guys. There was a county, I think it's Webster County, and because some of the people coming across the ferries and whatever were Webster County people, so they were able to extradite these guys. Finally capture. There was a Big Harp and Little Harp. They were two brothers.
Okay.
And they took them over to the county. And this is after years and years. Now, understand, there were still crazy harp women running around. Okay. So they had sort of a thing if they said, oh, if we put them here in Union County, they'll break them out. They'll find a way in.
Right.
Because there's so many of them. It was like hills have eyes. So
that's what I was thinking.
They took them over there. They were judged on the quit. I think they were hanged. I think either they were like hanged, shot, and then beheaded when their heads were put on pikes in front of the courthouse. This is documented.
Wow.
And, well, that's fine and good. Very brutal times, but it said a message. It more or less, and they said, anyone that does this, this is what you'll get.
Right.
And they left the heads there for quite a while. And heads like to rot. So after a while, the stench was bothering, people coming for whatever reason. And they said, this is not the image we want for the town. We got the point across.
Yeah. So
they put the heads right across the river facing Union County as a secondary going, hey, you get to smell this, and this way you remember it. Well, over time, obviously the harp women kind of died out or got therapy or got committed or whatever. Most of the gangs were done away with. And, of course, we weren't independent, so they had no real reason to stay there. So, anyway, but what happened after this is what's so strange.
Okay.
It was a thing where they would hear men coming up and down the paths. Sometimes they would be mounted on horseback, almost like a headless horseman.
Okay.
Which I was like, okay. And I said, that's, maybe it's urban legends, but they said, okay. They were in the woods. You would hear whistling. What do you mean whistling? How do they whistle without heads? Said, no, it was their neck holes. You'd heard gurgling and neck hole whistles, like, trying to breathe, trying to vocalize, but their heads had been separated. And they're looking for their heads. And then also sometimes they said they'd see floating heads out into the forest. And that's Union County.
And let me ask you, were they the only ones, did any of the other gang members, or were they the two, since it was their gang, they were the ones that...
They were the fat cats. And pretty much don't understand. It's like this. Sometimes if you don't join the gang, you become a gang member or you become fodder for the gang member. Yeah. But sometimes these people are like scared or coerced into like, well, you say anything, you'll get the same as them. Yeah. And there's a certain amount of that Stockholm syndrome as well. So these were some really evil dudes. What was the other thing from the Corsican brothers? They raped the fields and plundered the women, or whatever they said. They're kind of reversal of it. They're just really, really evil guys. And
I know
that place.
People don't realize that after the Civil War, there was a lot of, I don't want to say criminals, but a lot of men running around and women that were not the best citizens, if you know what I mean. And yeah, you had some really horrid characters like those two running around. And let's face it, the country was in disarray. Law and order was not what it should be as far as, protection for the citizens. So
you have that vibe of going, and like I said, let me go on the go on the record. I do not think the Klan were a good thing, but there were some people that swore that they kept them from being murdered or kept some sort of unit, some sort of militia thing. Yeah, they went way far with it, but some sort of militia to keep some basic semblance of order.
Well,
just like these guys to a point.
Yeah. I when I was writing my first book, there was a story that there's a town in Texas called Belton. It's like where the Chisholm Trail starts out of. And since they had sided with the South after the war, they got punished, And, of course, all the officials and everything were not Southerners. So basically these poor, and out there, people were living on their farms and ranches. And they were, all the criminals were, they had nobody to defend them, in other words. A lot of the men had gone off to war, never come back. So the few men that were there got tired of getting basically victimized by all these criminals running around, these gangs, because that's really what they were. That one time they had, they were like 9 of them in the jail. They went in there, they got them, brought them out, hung them all. Vigilante stuff. This is strictly vigilante. But guess what? After that, most criminals would not go really close to that area because they knew, hey, you know what? These citizens, these guys, the men that, they're gonna get you and they're gonna string you up. And what they did was, and then they buried their, like in an unknown place. None of these guys got in trouble, by the way. I guess somebody said, well, okay, they're mad. Leave them alone. But yeah, they took 9 criminals out of the jail cell and strung them up and then buried them in some corner of a cemetery somewhere.
Think about it like this. If you were a judge and you could not maintain an order, these guys did some stuff that the citizenry very much applauded. You probably wouldn't be a judge very long, and you may end up in the same position those guys were. So sometimes you got to read the room, and you got to make a hard choice and go with the thing that's like, well, they're dead already. I can't save them. So there it is.
But people don't realize that right after the war, that how there was, especially the further west you were from the eastern United States, as far as what we think of as law and order and the sheriff, it was few and far between sometimes. So you had to do your own type of justice.
Everybody talks about how civil the East was. That's not really true, because if you look at Eastern Kentucky, it was a freaking it was hardcore. Those guys didn't play. There's a reason they talk about hill people and hillbillies. Now it's kind of ha-ha funny, but those cats were serious. And similar to here, that's the thing. When you move away from what they call the Golden Triangle, like Lexington, Louisville, Frankfort, money gets thin, and people are very much on their own. That's more where state rights come into play. The closer you get to an urban city, the more Democrat, more like liberal it is. And again, I don't have a problem with liberals any more than I have a problem with Republicans. I think they're both kind of wrong on certain levels, and maybe a little bit right on some too. But the further away you get from the creature comforts, the further you get from Rome, the more wily it is.
Of course.
And the more you have to depend on yourself. You can't.
Right.
You're not sweating Rome because they're not there to help you.
Right. No, and it's and if help is not coming after a while, you're like, okay, we got to take care of this ourselves, which is what happened out there.
Right. Well, and that's kind of what it comes down to. That's what you got to understand is that just like certain isolated areas, because Union County is, I won't use the terminology. People who know what BFE is don't know what I'm talking about. It's just kind of like out in the middle of nowhere, pumping in sunlight. It was kind of like that. And it's still a very small area.
Right.
And good people. I've met very good people. But they're very protective of their history. I will say this. When we did the investigation of Higgins Learning Center, and I'll tell you again some more about that, I apologize. It had, like I said, was in between going from a convalescent center to being sold. And when I spoke to people that found out they bought it, we started talking. I didn't tell them I was a writer, because a lot of times that's sort of like saying I'm a tax collector, or, you want to hear the good word, they're going to get a door closed in your face. So I was just like, yeah, man, that's crazy. I know some people down here, and got some friends that live in Union County, and I always heard that place was haunted, and, I didn't really get too much into it. I investigated it, and they said, well, yeah, when we started taking walls down and stuff, we had a lot of activity, because my wife won't even come here at night. Or she'll come in the day with somebody, but she won't come at all at night. I'm like, okay. And I said, well, listen, I need to tell you something. I said, I did check it out a few years back, and I was telling the stuff I heard. He said, I've heard some of the same things. I've seen some of the same things. And I said, well, look, please be aware. I plan on writing a book. I would love to include your stories in it. And he said, no, don't do that. Because I'm trying to open the business. I don't want it to be known as the haunted car station. I want my business. I need business. People here, they think I'm tied up in some occult or paranormal. They won't mess with me. But I had to respect his view.
Sure.
But it was one of those things that I knew that, the activity that was being seen was still there, and still in the hall, and the things that don't exist anymore. Movement was coming up and down stairs that didn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So
that's something else when you hear that that it's not made up. It's like because they're existing on what was there before. Doors, walls, stairs. Yeah.
Time period. Physicality is still real to them, because they're in that pocket of time, as we're maybe in our pockets of time.
Right.
So some of the things that we've seen there, if you care to hear it.
Yeah.
Upstairs, back in the days when they used to use, like, I think it was past whale oil and stuff, but it was like the type of oil that you'd pour into old heaters, kind of kerosene heaters and whatever came before kerosene. I'm sorry, I'm not an oil expert. But there was, as usual, nuns, and there was an upstairs. And there was one nun, it was really cold, it had been icy, and they were trying to get all the snow kind of cleared out between buildings in case of whatever, to get the kids to different classes and different things. They still were trying to educate these kids. So everybody had worked from late to the later part of the evening. Well, for some reason, they didn't think of going, we need to go make sure that we fill the oil containers so it stays warm. Well, that's exactly what they didn't do. They didn't fill them, and they had just run out. And so there was a nun, got one of the containers still in her long, I think it's called a habit, and was trying to fill these. Well, it's, this also was kind of what provided some of their light, so they're trying to get everything turned on. Well, in the process, some of the oil got on her habit, so when she lit it up, the fumes caught.
Right, so yeah.
Went right up. And those things, oh God, yes, really badly. Burnt like 70-80% of her body.
Wow.
And so they tried to put her out the best they could. They tried to take her out and put her in the snow to do something, and she died. Okay. She fled. She couldn't survive that. Well, after this, years later, people started saying that they would see a nun. Now, this is not like the nun from that movie.
Right.
This is not like, a spooky, long-faced, ghostly monster. This is a shadow, pure shadow.
Okay.
And what happens is there's a curse connected with her.
Really?
Okay. What they told me when I went there, the first thing before I went to the door, I said, look, I got to tell you something. And it says, if you see a figure upstairs, that used to be the old heat, for upstairs, for right by the right side where the electronic furnace is now. So that used to be an oil burning furnace and an untied there. Oh, I'm very sorry to hear that. I says, well, thank you, but that's why I'm telling you that. They said, if you see a shadow that looks anything like a nun, even if you just see a shadow period, please do not go after it. And I'm like, okay, why? I mean, you don't want us to fall in the steps, you want us to destroy something? He says, no, obviously we want you to be safe, but there's a curse connected with her. And I'm like, come on, man. Seriously, I've never heard of it. It's like a Scooby-Doo episode,
Right,
Scooby
right.
the Cursed Nun.
Right.
And I said, give me background. They said, well, we had two different people in the last 30 years. Several people have seen it. They probably had 100 people see it.
Right.
One guy was put in the electronic thing, or the electronic furnace, and saw somebody, and thought it was after hours, so somebody snuck in. He took half after it. The thing, like, it was off the ground. It, like, hovered,
Okay.
glided in the air, took off like a shot, whoom, gone. So he's running after. It's like, what the hell is this? What am I seeing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's the first one. There's another one, was I think one of the ladies working in the, when it was a convalescent center, saw the same thing. It took off, and it looked like it went to the back where, I guess, the open area was, which would have been where the snow would have been. She ran out, didn't find anything. Both of these individuals, of their sightings within 6 months, died of the mysterious illness.
Oh.
And
That's
that
too
place
much
has
of a
been checked for
coincidence.
radon. Right. It's very weird. And the place has been checked for radon. Has been checked for all kinds of different gases, their exposure, asbestos, everything. There was no history of anything in these guys. The whole bloodline is super healthy. It was just a really strange occurrence. But they said maybe it's an occurrence, but it's enough that I wouldn't chase after it.
Right, yeah, just forget. I wouldn't.
Right. So now we saw stuff like in taking photos. We would see a lot of shadows going across the wall where there shouldn't be any light blockage, because our cameras are mainly the main lights in there, other than very minimal, what would you call it, security lighting, just to see inside the building, the wall. Well, we would take shots, and we would have long streaks of shadows going across, like dining hall areas, through the hallways. And we had actually got what looked like the outline of the head of a nun with a little white habit, the black and white looking, what they call the England outfit. I don't think it'd be disrespectful. That was freaky. But the weirdest stuff was stuff that we got on the EVPs. We were going through, there's a main hallway, and then there's and it kind of tees off. One side's boys, one side's girls, with a main hallway for doctor's offices, administration, a common area, and they could watch television and play games and activities. So anyway, we were coming into where the boys section was, and the door started slamming behind us. And I said, let's take some photos down this hall. And I said, and I told my wife, and I said, I just got a really heavy feeling. Please, do a voice recording. So the temperature was about a 10-degree temperature drop, which is not insane, but it went from like a 10 to about a 30-degree temperature drop, and then it went right back up. Well, we listened to the EVPs. You could hear a little boy going, "Can I go home?
Oh.
Can I go home now?" Well, the thing was, that was weird enough. Well, I started looking at these pictures. Some stuff was just very mundane, not a lot of activity. What I kept seeing in this hall, but it was almost completely shadowed. And I'm like, the flash should have illuminated a good part of this hall, because we use IR lights and all kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I kind of highlighted that picture, and I said, I'm going to come back to it. Well, other things, life, other investigations happen. I come back kind of with fresh eyes. I start playing with it. Changing the contrast up, bringing up the resolution.
Right.
And I'm like, man, that looks like a way on the left. Do you know what a pill cart looks like? Mm-hmm. Well, like you have a sort of a little bottom platform, then a top platform that's got like a little lip so stuff don't roll off.
Right.
I looked there, and I could see these two big, bright eyes, but it had a human shape outline of a face.
Oh, wow.
I brought the lady, who I will call Tanya,
okay,
who was able to get us in there, and I said, I want to show you three things. I said, you remember because she was with us, do you remember when the door was slamming? She's like, yeah. I said, we had temperature drops. I showed her the vocal, or I showed her the picture, and also played her the EVP, and she went, oh my God, Ryan? And I'm like, what? Who is Ryan? He says, there was a little boy that lived on that hall who would always like to hide under the, he was obviously able to be seen. It's like a 4-year-old. You can't see me. They put their hands over their eyes.
Right.
He would like hide. So the nurses would act like they didn't see him, and he'd go, rah, oh, you scared me, Ryan.
Right.
Well, and he was like a younger adult, But and I said, well, what happened to him? He said, well, he died here. And I went, oh. So, wow. And then we had another EVP. We went outside because we had some members that smoked. And I'm very funny about doing anything of an investigation that could pollute the findings.
Right.
I said, okay, well, all the doors are locked. We will go out front. I'm going to leave a recording in that hallway in the kind of commons area. We went out front. Not a soul was in there. We went out front. We come back. Well, and I'm starting to listen to this later that night. And I hear like a... like if something gets closer to the mic, it gets louder, then it fades.
Okay.
And it would sound like a skip, like a kid skipping or hopping. Okay. Well, and I'm like, that's really kind of weird. Then you heard kind of a giggle. And again, I said, hey, I'm sorry to keep bugging you with this. And I said, I'll keep finding stuff. And I said, listen to this. And she said, was there anybody? I said, no, there's nobody in there. And because it sounded like, like someone was kind of bouncing with a ball. And they said, I don't know what that, and they started thinking about it, and they asked another lady, and she said, oh, that might have been, I forgot her name, it might have been like Rebecca. And it said, we had a girl who had been in a car accident and gave her brain damage. But other than that, she was ambulatory and could run and climb.
Right.
Well, come to find out, she would run up and down that hall doing that same thing. She would giddy up like she had a horse, like a horsey.
Right.
And I said, did she die here? I said, no. I mean, she moved to another facility. I said, well, that's weird that we're hearing her here. Well, they did a little research for me. Come to find out she died about a month after she moved.
Oh, my God. So that facility was open until when, then?
That facility opened up as a care center in 1972, 78, somewhere in that area.
Okay.
And it closed down literally it had been weeks. I mean, you could feel the energy of the people there. It was so fresh.
Okay.
And, but it was not a lot of negative, abusive, horrible stuff. It was just, it was what it was.
Yeah.
So I went to this one room. Now, a lot of the rooms had little stickers. They would give them stickers as rewards, and they would stick them all over the walls. You know how a kid is.
Right.
You give them a hand, you give them 50 Ninja Turtle stickers. You're going to have 50 Ninja Turtles all over every bit of furniture, on the windows, or the television. Anyway, so I went to this one room, and it was a little bit nicer. It wasn't, opulent, but it was clean and didn't have stickers all over the walls. And I went, this room has a different feel. It's not bad. It's just different. And I said, whose room was this? Who lived in here? And the woman later says, oh, that was the supervisor's building, for whoever. It's been different supervisors. Well, I listened to the tape again, and I got yet again another EVP. And I didn't know that they had priests running it. I guess the priests were over it, where the nuns did the other facilities and teaching. Right. So I didn't know that because I heard it, and when I said, hey, whose area was this? I heard a guy in a very Irishy kind of bro, and very breathy, talk a bit more like this, He said, that's the Father's building. Just like it. It still gives me goosebumps thinking about it. It was like, geez, crow. Because I didn't know. I did not know it was that active. And when we did the book, because I was like, I'm going to write about Union County. I said, which is great because we actually did investigation there. It is so active. So that was what was so fun about doing that. And obviously in a weird way. I mean, there's going to be death involved. There's going to be some misery involved, but it comes with what you do. But yeah, it's extremely, extremely active. I mean, it included stories about like a wolf type creature, almost like a dog man.
Really?
This ties into Slack Farm. I don't know how much time we got.
Keep going.
This ties into Go. Okay. You're twisting my arm over here.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm twisted. So, okay, go ahead.
Okay. Slack Farm. Slack Farm was huge on a lot of levels. First of all, Native American burial plots had zero rights. They were like, if you went digging up in a field and you come across arrowheads or a bone or a skull or whatever, just go, that's super weird. I guess some Indians, whatever, grind it up and keep going.
Right.
Now, some people would take, try to move stuff out of respect, or if there was arrowheads, they would kind of save them and say, this is belong to the people from this time. They wouldn't sell them, or they just kind of keep them as, this is connected to this land.
Right.
My father-in-law was like that. But there was an area called Slack Farm in Union County. And there were some guys came to the family. It was a Slack family and said, hey, we'll give you $1,000 a head if you give us permission to gather, pots and things.
Okay.
Just give us the freedom to do whatever. You get $1,000 a head. There's 10 or 15 men. That's a lot of good money in 1970s.
Oh yeah.
Well, they gathered a bunch. They pretty much threw away most of the pottery. Weren't worried about arrowheads. They wanted bones. They wanted skulls, men, women, children, teeth, all this stuff, and they sold them on the black market. Well, words got out. I honestly, and it's one of these things, I come to find out that the person that returned them in was somebody who was bidding on the skulls, but they wouldn't meet their price. So they turned around and burned them. See?
There you go. Yeah.
Got to be careful who you deal with.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
if you don't treat them right, they'll burn you.
Disgruntled
Anyway.
possible customer, but there you go.
Right. Yeah. The customer's always right. At least in that incident. It's a horrible thing, but I'm just saying.
Yeah,
So,
but yeah.
Okay, you ready for the really wacky part?
So
The guy reported it. Word got out to the media. Then it got out to like First Nations and Native American groups. They lost their what. Mm-hmm. They took this all the way to the Supreme Court. This is like after the Wounded Knee thing.
Yes, exactly.
Native American rights was very much AIM and all that. It was huge. And they were saying, look, you plunder our stuff, we'll plunder yours. And they pushed, and finally they got where Native American lands, like mounds and stuff, are protected.
Right.
You will do the same thing as somebody went and dug up your grandma.
Sure, of course.
They will get you. So it actually did a historical precedent, not paranormal, but it's important. After all that work was said and done, they were put back as respectfully as it could be. The ground was rededicated by elders. Mm-hmm. But ever since that, they've spotted Bigfoot-type creatures and dogman-type creatures. I don't know if they're protectors of the area. There was a guy who went hunting, took his dogs just close to there. Regular hunting dogs, seasoned dogs know what they're doing. Him and his friend went out. They had a pickup truck and had like a little carrier in the back to keep their dogs. Well, they go out, I don't know, 9 or 10 o'clock trying to look, hunting coons or whatever things you hunt at night out there. So anyway, they're out there, and one of the dogs just takes off, and these dogs aren't, they're controlled. They're been taught, you go set, boom, they set, they say roll over, they do, they know what they're doing. One dog takes off after something, like a shot. They're yelling for it. Get back, what are you doing? It's over here, no. So he takes off into the woods. Well, the other one soon follows suit. As the other one's running off, you hear some yelping and like a growl. Then you don't hear any yelping anymore.
Oh.
They're like, what's going on? And they're going, I don't know what's out there. It's a bear. I'm not playing with it. Them dumb dogs will come back in a minute or they won't. So they go looking around for them for a little bit. Well, they come back to the car. And it's like, I guess we just lost 2 dogs, which is a lot of money. And they're like, well, didn't even get any coons. So they go back to the truck.
Right.
And they see something under the truck. And it's the second coon dog. And it's sitting there just shaking. Not to be boring, it's pissed itself. It's frothing. It's freaked out.
Yeah, and
it's like
it's terrified. In other words,
horrific. Yeah, a ghastly horror. Unconsolable. Well, they go, I don't know what happened to the other one. This one, man, let's just get it home. I'm getting creeped out now because I kept hearing noises crunching around and seeing outlines of large, like 8, 9 foot tall something back there.
Okay.
So they go to put the dog back into the thing. The dog's fighting to get into the back of the truck. They go to close the tail bed, and they see 3 or 4 very deep, large slashes in the back of the truck. I'm talking into metal. I'm talking 1970s can take a hit.
Right.
Actual metal vehicle.
Yes, back then, yeah. That was...
And the guy, the guy who just got the story through, said he left, The dog was, never was quite the same. Became a porch dog, and if it heard anything, it didn't matter what it was in the woods. Or the sun went down, it was in the house. It was never right. And he said he actually ended up hunting. Just stopped doing it.
I mean,
and that.
Yeah, it's like,
you know what I'm saying. So.
Yeah, let me tell you that's a very interesting story. It makes you wonder if once the Native Americans once they reclaimed that and they reconsecrated or rededicated the land, it makes you wonder if any of the people there, whether it was a medicine man or a shaman or whoever, on purpose called up those guardians.
I'll go further than that. There's a lot of different tribes that come through here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people talk about like Skinwalker Ranch, like that's the only place they had skinwalkers. That's not true. Navajos and a lot of different tribes come through Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wonder if it was some like a spirit of a skinwalker, because I was talking to a friend of mine, because
mm-hmm.
it's fairly common, and I said, this is sort of like the Kentucky Skinwalker Ranch. This is such a weird situation. And as I understand it, it's kind of, I'm not saying that the government necessarily has taken over it, but it's one of those, you don't go up there.
And what is it now? Is it just like federal land or park, or what is it?
I think it's went from like private lands to
mm-hmm.
some sort of preserve.
Okay.
Or a reserve. So,
okay.
I mean, again, I'm not 100% sure. So
right.
On that.
But nobody's building anything out there, in other words, either. It's like,
no.
Yeah.
It's got weirder and weirder, because the way it is, it's sort of off on, it's closer to Uniontown,
mm-hmm.
on one of the smaller short roads. And like I said, and that's why I try to include it, because there's so much insanity in that one little area. And like I said, and this is Kentucky. I mean, I know, crazy. And what people don't get is Kentucky is kind of flyover. Now they'll go to New Orleans because they're drinking and this and that, and a lot of crazy stuff, but they don't even realize. And that's not even touching on like, Ozark witchcraft and all that stuff. All this stuff.
Let me tell you something though. You know that the people that were selling those bones, you know what they were selling them for, right? For metaphysical, for the black arts. That's why they didn't care about.
Sure.
They didn't care about the pottery. They didn't care about arrowheads. Let me tell you something. Those bones belonging to the humans that were interred there, and obviously they were not for scientific purposes. No, that was strictly for occult metaphysical use. Probably they sold them for a lot of money too.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I understand. Gobs of money.
Oh yes.
So, and that's what you're looking at, and like you said, it's a very strange area.
Yeah. Yeah, boy.
And like I said, and that's not even touching on half of the stories with this. Which I mean, if you want to talk a little bit about the mud flood book, we can do that too.
Yeah, let's go. I mean, let me tell you something. It's like, and I know we briefly spoke about that, and you were telling me about this is such an interesting story about the premise of this book, Steve. You want to explain that? Because I don't think a lot of people are aware of it. I wasn't aware of it until you started telling me about it.
I had no clue, and I like to consider. I'm not a paranormal snob. There's a bunch I don't know, and I'm glad I don't, because I get to learn stuff all the time. But I've heard of different things. I've heard of like Bermuda Triangles, different bad things happening in areas. But this was apparently a worldwide thing. Depends on how deep you want to get with it. Some people can go, before 1700s, because it was kind of out of the Black Plague. Well, some people say, it's because there were certain advanced species that were from the Nephilim bloodlines, and
mm-hmm.
fallen angels, and you can go really far.
Right.
Some people even tie it in with flat earth stuff. I didn't even touch that. I just left it to the facts, or the supposed facts, of the mud flood. Supposedly around, I guess, 1700s into the early 1800s, there had been a series of very devastating calamities, and like biblical proportions. What do they say? Cats and dogs living together. It was bad.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry. Everything's movies with me. But so a lot of areas were completely flooded down with topsoil. In fact, they said the stuff with the Dust Bowl wasn't because of poor planning; it was because of a lot of the topsoil was gone due to this event.
Okay.
Well, if you look at St. Petersburg Chapel or Cathedral, I'm not sure. I'm blanking on which one it is. There are pictures of it supposedly in its erecting or construction.
Okay.
Well, if you look, this is supposed to be a fairly affluent area.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at pictures of it, and this is a bigger area, the roads looked like they were dirt or mud. There were no people. I mean, I'm talking no people.
Okay.
And the building itself looked like it was covered in 8 to 10 foot of mud, like they were excavating. You could see where it was stained on the walls. And so there was a lot of parts of the building that seemed to be underground. Now, I know there's a certain amount of dirt and different things that settle. That's just, how it is. I said, well, they can look at strata of earth and go, oh, this is from 200 years ago. This is from 400 years ago.
Right.
Well, this would not have made sense with that building. If you go to places like Seattle, like where they talk about the underground.
Right, but that was purposely done. They did that kind of on purpose, though, as far as...
Right, but there are certain areas where, like, buildings were, like, had windows into the earth. Like, not like it was a lifted up window. There should have been no reason for that. Short of a cataclysm in the ground, the building fell into the ground, but you're going to know that. I think you're going to kind of know you had a devastating earthquake and it pulled 35 buildings into the ground.
Of course.
That would be big news.
Yeah.
No reports of this. And there were a whole lot of different places. Some of them were port towns, but they're all over. And all these buildings have, 1 or 2 stories underground. It was just a really quirky thing, and it supposedly all come from the Tartan Empire. And the Tartan Empire was an area that basically was all of Russia, bordering and I think taking over some of China and lower. I mean, it was the largest.
Yeah, what they call the Russian steppes and stuff. Yeah, out there, Tartaria. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. It was huge, but the thing was supposedly the history of this. This is where the conspiracy theory. I'm doing air quotes. The conspiracy theory comes into play.
Right.
They feel that the reason that this even happened was the Tartans had advanced technology, be it them being descendants of Atlantis or whatever, or off-worlders, who knows what. But anyway, they were kind of a breakaway civilization.
Right.
Well, they had the ability to have zero-point energy. They had the ability to move large objects.
Okay.
With sound, and also they could manipulate the weather. Well, that's all fine and good. They made wonderful things that, people's lives were incredible. But they had jealousies, just like, Rome had 2 emperors. They would have different wars, kind of feudal things, and they would use weather against each other. The point it got so out of control because there was areas all across the world that was servants of the Tartan Empire, to the point where basically there was a worldwide just uncontrolled surges of storms, because like the butterfly effect. You do something here, it will affect something else.
Right, like a ripple effect.
So bad. Right, a ripple effect, and just like a wave goes out, a wave comes in. Right. So it caused such calamity that it killed a lot of people. And then apparently there were a handful of people that were the power brokers. They escaped. They suppressed the knowledge. But this ties in also with Nikola Tesla.
Really?
Tesla had all these patents for different types of stuff for zero-point energy, death rays, weather manipulation. Almost half the stuff we're doing today comes from the things that were stolen by the FBI shortly after his death in the New York hotel. Right. Well, there's a thing I heard. I never heard this. They were asking Tesla, like, how's it feel to be a genius? How does it feel to come up with all this? How is it possible? One man, and basically he was like, it's not. He said, I had outside help. And it was like, people is known on people. So you could either go, oh, he thinks he's talking to spirits, he's talking to angels, or he had some sort of connection with this other empire. Some people thought maybe perhaps he was even a descendant of these people are a reincarnation of somebody who had that knowledge, and it never got lost. Because it depends on who you talk to. If you look at stuff like Edgar Cayce and his prophecies, okay, much like the Tolkien worlds, which world are you talking about? First age, second age, and fourth age. We keep having resets, and because we get too big for our britches, and we knock it over, and that's kind of where that comes from. And where it leaves off is, for me, are we on that same kill switch? Are we on that same, feeling of hubris that, we can control this. We have that. And just because we can do it, do we need to do it?
And basically what you're saying is that there's, which I'm not surprised that history as we know it is not really that, let me use a nice word, accurate or truthful, or that there's parts of it that are being omitted, in other words, is what you're saying.
Right. Well, see, okay, and again, I listen to a lot of different people in regards to, because I like to research stuff. Even if it might seem nutty to me, if I find something that connects to something, I was like, well, maybe there's a possibility. Yeah. I don't rule anybody out. Mm-hmm. If you look at guys like, I don't know if you've ever talked to Robert Suffer before.
I haven't, but I've heard, I've listened to several of his videos. They're very interesting. As a matter of fact, especially the one about the Rh negative blood. The other day I was looking at that, but let's keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I'm just saying, because like I said, I don't live in a vacuum. I'm like everybody else. I'm a fan and have an interest in the paranormal. So, I listen and kind of get little bits of knowledge from different people. But talked about, how there's stuff showing that there was an earlier precursor, way beyond, what do they call it? Before the Native Americans. What was the man? Something down man, or Clovis person.
Right, exactly. That they have, that all these. I know what you're saying. That every time they find these skeletons, they give them like some type of. I know what you're talking about. I know what you mean.
Right. Well, and they're talking about finding like machinery and things from an earlier race. I'm not talking Vikings. I'm not talking. I'm talking like this shouldn't be here. It's kind of like a Baghdad battery type situation.
Right, something that predates all this stuff. Yeah, the Iron Age, in other words.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, way before that. Much more intricate, using gold and stuff for connections and stuff. Which, as we all know, gold is a wonderful conductor of electricity. Exactly. That's why they use them in computers. There's a little bit of gold in every computer. So they actually have people in like third world countries, use butane lighters or butane torches to heat up the boards, which is highly toxic. It's horrible, but they will get a certain amount of gold off of that from each computer, and they'll turn around and sell it.
Right.
But that's what you're left with. It's like, okay, well, is our history, or this is what I had a conjecture about, or if that's a word, I had a conjecture. Anyway, maybe. I think that this ties in with the Mandela effect.
Yes.
Maybe when that happened, a few of us remembered things from the divergence from that timeline. Because wherever that line, that we may not be Earth Prime, we may be like a split of Earth Prime. That might be a dead planet. It may be never completely come back for whatever reason. But there's all kinds of different evidence of that, and there's even talking about, different cultures. People would talk about a biblical water flood, but they also would talk about, great sheets of the earth moving, tectonic plates flipping and stuff. Really big, biblical stuff.
Right.
And so you have to look at it.
If you think about it, the history, let's say if we're talking something like that, it's only as good as if anybody was there to remember it or that recorded it. Because if events like this take place and nobody, no matter how advanced the civilization, if they don't record it, how would we know? Unless we find artifacts, I mean.
Right, but what happens with the artifacts that goes against the dogma of...
there you go.
And that's what's been reported, is that anything that's outside of that touches on that is ridiculed and spirited away. I'm not saying necessarily to the Smithsonian, but I'm sure to the Smithsonian.
Well, you
and
know
other,
what? And you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, Steve, because if you're interested in any type of paranormal, whatever, doesn't have to be ghosts, anything. You always have to have an open mind, like you were saying. You have to look at different theories, whatever they are, and you examine them, and you think, okay, this has merit or no or whatever. But there's in these fields, which usually it's the ones that put out these theories are scientists or whatever. They have egos, and after a while, especially as the years go by, that this theory has been put out, nobody wants to backpedal and say, either one, we were wrong, or even worse, two, we were lying. And
yeah, that's the worst part of it.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then they push that theory, whatever the established, version is. And like you said, anybody that says something differently or challenges it is ridiculed.
Well, I'll tell you this, and it's two flips of a coin. And again, like I said, I have no beef, I have no bones with religion. That's whoever's business. Mm-hmm. But like, you know how like the Vatican has miles of pamphlets, papayas, written down papaya stuff, right. Ancient, stuff that everybody talks about. The Alexandrian library was sacked. I guarantee that the most important stuff was taken, mm-hmm. and they probably let some of it burn. Maybe it's a good way to get them off people's trail and say, well, that's just lost.
Yeah, right. Like don't go looking for it because it's ashes right now.
Back to now, because I bounced because it's all a big circle. You go to the Tesla trunks. Okay, supposedly I think he had like 80 of them or something, 80 or more. He had a lot of, and this is all patents, just crammed full of stuff. Mm-hmm. I think 60 were accounted for, and the rest gone. So who knows what they had there? I know he had like free energy. I knew he had what's the term? I'm blanking on it. Where you basically make salt water into fresh water.
Right.
He had all that, and he wanted to give it to the world. He wanted to save the world. Would it have derailed our concept of what is life in, the capitalist system and socialist systems? They're all systems, but everyone would be pretty much free to do what they have to do, and you wouldn't have to be more or less, dealing with, all the power of the oil companies and this and that.
Of course. And so it boils down to, of course, like you said, money and power, control, Yeah, that's what it comes down to. And then you get somebody that's kind of an idealist, like Tesla, who
right.
Who want, like you said, he's thinking, let's just give this out for free. Boy.
Yeah, he was dangerous, man. He was so dangerous to the system. And I'm an old punk rocker, so I hear myself say it now. He's a threat to the system, dude. I'm not saying it like it, but he literally was like, well, man, we're all struggling to try to eat, and we're struggling that we can't afford something. Cool, here, that's not a problem anymore.
Yeah.
Have fun. That nobody wants that. If you can't put just like Westinghouse, if I can't put a meter on it and not charge these people, I don't want any part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So, there was stuff tying in. Okay, do you remember a guy by the name of Van Tassel who was trying to make a regenerative machine out around was it Joshua Tree?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name of it. Actually, I had the gentleman who did the documentary on it. I apologize. I'm blanking on his name at the moment, but he supposedly had gotten a hold of different information. Some people say it was from aliens that were giving him some sort of mind download, if you want to call it that.
Okay.
But he had this building, and it was supposed to be ran with various interconnecting pieces of metal and magnets and stuff. More or less like, well, you could use it as a time machine, but it was a rejuvenating machine.
Okay.
And supposedly it caused your body to go like a 1-year-old, like you're going to heal very quickly. Your organs will heal. Your impurities will leave your body.
Right.
It's more or less, like you said, a rejuvenation machine. And that, too, was also supposedly tapped into this earlier Tartarian Empire.
Right.
So, Because look at, I mean, look at these people that go now, even back in the 50s and 60s, or later, like, say, like ladies like Tina Turner, they would go to these countries and have fresh blood.
I know that's
and it's trippy, right?
Well, you think of Elizabeth Bathory, who, that's supposed
very much. Well, see, and that's the thing. I think that I'm not going to say she's a scapegoat, but I think that was like, I think about it like this. You're walking through and you got 5 or 6 people with you and they're going, there they are. You're going, yeah, that one. She's the worst one. Get her.
Yeah.
Can you believe the stuff she did? And they let her fall for a lot of that. But then it turned it into going, oh, well, it's an occult thing. It's a magic thing. Which, I guess maybe it could be, but there was a science to it,
right. Yeah. And here we're coming to find out, she's always been painted as like a serial killer, insane noblewoman, who just,
right.
or, with vampire, even though, hits upon the idea of staying young by bathing in the blood of these girls, right? But then here, fast forward 400 years, hey,
right.
all the celebrities are doing that.
That's the thing. I don't think she was probably any more evil than some of the noblemen that were, killing their nephews, letting them starve to death in towers, or somebody who's sending, a king who's wanting to sleep with some nobleman's wife, sending him off to the front lines to get killed. I mean, it was hard.
Well, let me tell you something. All they did with her was they didn't execute her. Once they finally, I guess she was out of control, they were like, okay, she's too crazy. All they did was lock her away, like in one of her castles. They didn't execute her.
Well, no, she was still a noblewoman.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the thing. I mean, it's who you know and who you connected with.
Of course.
If you and me decided to walk into a store and punch somebody out, we would be on the next paddy wagon. I guess it's still totally the correct word to use, but if it's somebody who's in the know, well, let's try to keep this out of the papers.
Well, of course, I mean, let's say for some reason, because you know how things are lost in translation, the number of women or girls or people that she killed is exaggerated, but still, sounds like she went through a bunch of peasant girls or village. You're thinking, at what point nobody ever said, hey, it was like, a few peasant girls, who cares,
right.
Whatever.
Well, and I'd also think too that, talk to the families.
Yeah.
The families had to kind of get a hint what she's about. You're still going to let your daughter go work there? How much do they pay you to do that? Did you sell your daughter to be executed?
Right. Exactly. Because after a while, that had to have gone out. Like, man, whatever you do, don't send your kid over there.
Right. That's exactly right. Because that was the thing. A lot of times you would work for a baroness or a countess, and it was almost like a finishing school. You'd learn a trade.
Right.
You would learn somewhat proper behavior, and you could marry up because it was all caste system.
Right, yeah.
So.
No, or a lot of people don't realize that back then, once you served in some of these houses, basically you were being guaranteed shelter, food on a steady basis. Those things sometimes are really important if you've been hungry and cold. And even if you were like the lowest level servant, it was like, hey, at least I know I got a roof over my head and I get fed on a regular basis. So, yeah, sometimes, I hate to say it, it was like, yeah, that scary lady on the hill, but...
yeah. Maybe it'd be starvation. I mean, that's the thing of traveling to places like Thailand and seeing, it's one of these things people are like, well, Thailand's a third world country. I said, but I saw some really insanely beautiful buildings, some very opulent lifestyles, but the poor, there was like, they would pass each other. The poor and the extremely wealthy, but walked the same streets or whatever. At least they drove by the same streets, but they never communicated a lot of times. And don't get me wrong. I find it a beautiful country. I find it has a very rich history, especially ghost culture. They have ghosts for everything. And it's very much ancestral worship. I had one person look at me in a negative way and say anything negative to me. They smiled and they were very welcoming. But there's that, okay, I've reached a certain class and you're over here, so just let me do my thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but that's common. And that was, like you said,
Right.
that's the thing. You come from nothing. What do you got to lose?
Exactly. That's my point. It's like, man, you know, out here, I'm starving and cold, and sometimes I don't know if I'm going to eat the next day, and even then,
Right.
the quality of food. Whereas if you got a position in a castle or a mansion or whatever, it was like, okay, at least there they got fires. I can keep warm.
Right.
Uh,
Some semblance of security.
of course, and
Right.
again, we come back to our modern sensibilities. We get so used to what's normal for us. If people don't realize that that's not always the case, especially in those years where the value of
Well,
life is not what it is now.
and it's not even. I'll do you one more. Um, you know, there's still pockets of slavery and abuse and sex trades. I mean, in
Oh,
Thailand there was there too. I'm not trying to dog Thailand, but
absolutely,
it's all over the place.
absolutely, absolutely. Yes, of
So
course.
we're not that far removed from that bestial, really kind of visceral, simple, kill it, eat it, or F it. You know what I'm saying?
No, 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 we're
That kind of
not.
stuff.
No, we're not. They, like
But
that people put themselves in dangerous situations or in dangerous places, and you think, how could they do that? It's because sometimes it's like either that or living a horrible life. How's that? I mean, okay. It's like you said,
yeah,
what do I got to lose?
I'll tell you this. I've never told anybody this. In doing research and doing my genealogy,
Mm-hmm.
I had a grandmother,
Okay.
and I was showing these different things, and they were showing like different names and different things. Come to find out, this girl married at like 11 or 12
Mm-hmm.
to an older man. It's basically like a indentured servant.
Right.
Worked with him until he passed away a few years later.
Right.
Another older man
Mm-hmm.
married her, and she probably had like 5 or 6 husbands by the
Right.
time she met my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a rough life.
Yeah.
Poor Kentucky girl, no education.
Right.
But that's modern life. It's not. I mean, you see stuff like the old coal miner's daughter story. That's real life. There's people living in
Yes.
really horrific stuff now, but that's where you have to appreciate what you got and strive for the best. And you don't want to get full of yourself. Otherwise, you're gonna, wipe your race out with some crazy weather technology or something. Doing
Yeah.
stuff with DARPA and all that stuff.
Well, you know what? My grandmother, my maternal grandmother, she was orphaned very young, and she had a godmother who was connected and got her basically to be schooled in with a convent of nuns. You know how you like a boarding school kind of thing.
Right.
So she kind of worked a little bit scrubbing floors, but they taught her how to read and write. But my grandmother got married when she was 15 to my grandfather, who was 28. And she said that the only
It
thing
was
is,
common then.
yeah, and of course, her family, this godmother of hers, because back then, by the way, people took very seriously being a godparent. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it was a responsibility. It was a
Right.
real,
It was like, make
real
sure,
heavy deal.
you are getting married in in the Catholic, none of this, because back then, also people don't realize people get together and say they were married when they were, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah, common law stuff.
right, common law stuff. And her godmother said, fine, no, you're going to get married, in the church, in the Catholic church, like this is all good and proper, and that's it. And once you're
Right.
married, that's it. I'm not washing my hands of you, but now you're a married lady. You're 15 years old though.
Yeah, no, yeah, you carry it. You carry this now.
Right,
So
exactly.
no, I mean that's the thing. People didn't marry like all this Hallmark stuff.
Yeah, I
My
know.
wife loves that stuff. It was not about that. It was about
Yeah.
you get somewhere that's secure, and it was that. Oh, and I'm not making a joke, but do you remember you know where the whole rule of thumb thing comes from, right?
No.
Okay, you ever heard the term of going, well, rule of thumb of this is sort of like blah blah blah.
Right, right. Well, yeah,
The
yeah. I
rule
know
of
what
thumb,
but I mean, I
the
understand why
expression,
it's mean, but what's behind that? Because I know some things you never
the
really
origin.
know.
Well, the origin of it is much darker. I always like to find out the origins of why things are called this, like why whatever different things are called different things.
Uh huh.
So anyway, like assassins come from assassins, which was killers that were given a lot of dope, including
The
hashish,
yeah.
where they didn't feel anything.
Right.
So that's where it comes from. Anyway, I can give you all kinds of useless information, but rule of thumb came from laws for men and their wives, because they're like,
God.
look, well, back in the day, dark. They're going to say, well, look, well, you can't beat your wife to death.
Yes.
Come on, we're noblemen, we're whatever. But you can get a wooden reed, no bigger than your thumb.
Right.
It can be as long as you want, no bigger than your thumb, and you can, she acts up, crack across the back of the legs. That's the rule of thumb. It's a metered,
right? Like
metered response. And
don't get carried away. If you're gonna beat her, you just want to teach her a lesson. You don't want to maim her.
That's what was going on. That's what was going on, and it was not just so much for the noblemen.
Yeah.
It was more for the people who served them, because your wife burns the toast. You beat her half to freaking death. She's not going to be much good for them tomorrow. Shining the silver. So it was about maintaining some civility amongst the livestock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like don't get carried away now. Like you said, because and they're not doing it out of compassion either. It wasn't like, oh no, it was like, we need that person to do something for us, and like you said, she's no good to us if she's like either dead or badly injured. So, don't inconvenience us when you get upset with your wife.
And as brutal as it sounded, and again, I am not supporting beating your wife. I've said a lot of crazy stuff on this podcast, but
you know what? That's the reality of what was, like you said. That's where that saying came from. You can't pretend that didn't exist.
It gave them a certain, probably a certain thing of going, well, look, I have to correct them. Well, okay, at least I didn't beat them to death. And as dark as it is, that was the mentality.
Well, and the same thing, and that even came to disciplining children,
Oh yeah, 100%. And that's what's so insane. I'm glad I don't live back then. Don't get me wrong though. As of going out and camping and kind of living out on the land, all that's great.
Right.
When it comes to like co-minor kids and all the horrible stuff that happened in the day. I mean, I appreciate penicillin and different things like that for because I probably would have cut myself with an axe handle or axe by now and died of something. So
like I say, back then there was no 911 or let's go to the emergency room. People died sometimes of just an infection because.
Do you know what my dad would do? I mean, this is unrelated, so not paranormal, but if I ever got a cut, I got a cut one time. I stepped on a mason jar. I was in the yard for some unknown reason, and my dad didn't take me to the doctor. He got some coal oil and poured it into my cut. It's kind of like turpentine.
Oh.
And it disinfected it, and then he wrapped it with duct tape or something, bandaged it. But that was how it was back in like now you go to the doctor and they'll put a super glue in a little cut, and that's what we did a zillion years ago. So
plus and it's not only that. I mean, let's face it, your kid gets a cut like that, you're hauling ass out to that ER like, oh my god, oh my god.
Yeah, it's a different vibe. It's a totally different vibe because, like you said, children were seen and not heard. Children were, if you're on a farm, they were. If you got a 3-year-old and says, well, in 5 years he'll be next year's, guy pushing the plow. The older one, he's stronger. Next year I'll have me another strong field hand. Well, so you have different things.
You know what? I hate to say it.
Families,
That's what I was gonna say. Everybody sometimes thinks that having all those kids, it was like, oh, no TV or whatever. It was like, not part of it was that, but a lot of it was help. And your older children eventually would help take care of the younger ones. It was like there was a reason, there was a purpose to, And of course, back then you knew that sometimes children didn't survive infancy, so. As utilitarian as that sounds, there was a purpose to having a large family.
Well, I mean, reproduction isn't. Again, we have this sort of sappy maudlin type of
Yeah, we do.
thing. Which, I mean, that's fine if you have your, we're going to conceive our child and that's fine. But most people, I don't think, happen like that.
Yeah.
And the thing was, I was born in November, so that would put me back in like what, January, February.
Right.
Must have been some cold nights here in Kentucky, which, like I
Yeah.
said, I'm the youngest of 7. So there must have been a lot of cold nights. But it's just one of those things, when you take away from that and you tie in history with, kind of getting back to the thing, when you tie in history with all the crazy stuff that's happened in the past, all the different things that have happened, the different wars, the different this and that, which were normal and commonplace to people in the time, and the descendants of that, and how it affected them. Just like people would see a lot of World War II ghosts. I don't think right after World War II, people were seeing World War II ghosts. They were probably seeing from the First War, the Great War, as they called it.
Right, exactly.
So it's sort of like there's a gap. But then again, there's people that have been, in an accident, and people swear up and down they see them.
Yes.
It tends to be more famous people, though, because I think, I don't know, maybe people want to see them. But that's what you're left with. You're left with that awe, that curiosity.
Yes.
Sometimes you're pleasantly surprised. Sometimes you're a little revolted by it all. But that's kind of the, how do I say it? And because I do research. I do not say I'm a paranormal expert. I do not say I'm a whatever. Because obviously, if it's something that's interesting,
Right.
I still get a thrill out of it. If I ever do that, if I ever lose that, I don't want to be a part of it.
Right.
But, you do learn a lot of different things, good and bad.
Right. Well,
So,
you know what? But I'm the kind of person, and I hate, because basically when you're talking research, you delve at some point into history. And I hate it when people, like you say, you come across some ugly facts, and they want to either erase it or revise it. And I'm like, no, you got to leave it the way it is. Good, bad, ugly. It is what it is. The truth is the truth. And I have a problem when people, because now it's offensive now, but back then that maybe was the norm or what people did to survive.
Yeah. Well, here at our courthouse in Caldwell, we had a couple of different courtrooms. I thought lower court, higher court, which today it kind of is like that. But now they got it where back in the day, it was the Caucasian courthouse rooms and then the black ones. That's when I was a kid, I'd go to school, and it doesn't matter what floor you're on, you can get some water. I was like, I'd run, go up and down, because there was 2 or 3 of them on each floor. Like, damn, there's some thirsty people back in the day. But it was because they had some just for whites,
Right.
just some for blacks, and then also some for the administration.
Right.
Because, kids are gross and snotty-nosed. So they kind of had, well, this is our executive water area,
Right.
and teachers went. So, but anyway, and that's just a fact.
Right.
Just like you start playing with it, you start pulling down, okay, this is a little political, so I apologize.
Oh,
But you start jerking down, Civil War things, which are protected federally. These were American fighters, good or bad.
Exactly.
They thought they were fighting for states' rights, regardless if you think the war was about slavery,
Right.
about
Right.
cotton trades, about taxes, tariffs.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you think it was about. The fact is, in the early 1900s, they said that these were Americans fighting for a cause they believed in, but obviously this side won. But we respect them because these are fighting men. A lot of them. What the people forget is they think that Northerners were all West Point trained, and Southerners were like just bunkums,
Right.
Coming out of the cornfields. A lot of the people went to the same point. They went, a lot of the
Yes,
big guys
they
went to
were-
West Point,
Yes.
knew each other's,
Yes.
knew each other's families, were related on some level.
Yes.
And it was an unfortunate thing. It was an ugly thing. It got way out of hand, but that people forget. And when you start losing history, that's why we say, just like look at the mud flood thing. If you don't look at the history with an open mind, you suppress or destroy this information.
Exactly.
You're cheating future generations.
And you know
'Cause they don't
what?
know what's going on.
It's things could be going on now that 100 or 150 years in the future, people will be looking at, and you would be thinking, if there was a way for you to go, but you really don't understand what was going on or why people did certain things the way they did. because unless
Right.
you have time travel, I mean, despite all the history, still, I think that it's like they want to make it black and white, and there's different shades of gray as to what motivates people to do certain things because they had to, and maybe the generations in the future will look at it and go, "What? They did what?" And it's like, but it's not that black and white, you know.
Right.
And
There's-
like I
yeah.
agree with you. I don't like. In other words, I prefer the unvarnished truth when it comes to history and leave it as it is.
And you know what? Sometimes the truth is situational. Maybe
of
at
course
the
it is.
time, where you went back, like the whole "would you kill baby Hitler" type of thing. Of course he's gonna grow into something evil. Wait a minute, you're gonna kill a baby? Why not see if you can change his history, or is he
Right.
just predestined by it? Because if so, that means we have no free will and we're all slaves
Right.
of fate. So why try? But at the time, if someone said, "Yeah, I killed Hitler because there's a possibility he could do this," but in someone from another point, like I said, could look at it and go, "You just killed a baby."
Well,
You don't know
Do
for
you
sure,
remember that
you know.
movie, The Boys from Brazil?
Oh yeah, it's been a minute, but yeah.
It's the same guy, Ira Levin, the one that wrote Rosemary's Baby. And the premise of that one is that he clones. The character, of course, it's fictional, but he clones
that's the
all
one that
these
had a
little
young Steve
Hitlers
Gutenberg in
and
it, didn't it?
huh?
Was that the one that had a young Steve Gutenberg in it?
Was it a young Steve Gutenberg? It was with
Yeah, he
Gregory
was like all the
Peck.
Police Academy stuff, but this is like his very first. Yes, it's very
Maybe
first
it
role.
was. And basically, it's kind of the same premise where he clones all these children that are supposed to be Hitler clones, and they
Right.
disperse these babies in different families that are very similar, and then they try
Like the program
to
they did,
right. They kill
Well,
the
I was just
father, to in other words, make him an orphan. Like they try to duplicate the the events of Hitler's life, trying to reproduce them in a way. Okay.
right, second further, second further,
Right. And
pure.
it's like and again at the end, because they're thinking, he's gonna grow up to be the same person that the original Hitler was, which he didn't. If you, at the end of the story, he basically does in the doctor that cloned them all, because even though it was like there's something about, like you said, that if you were able to travel back in time,
Right.
it still doesn't guarantee a certain outcome.
I could have seen that, because if anybody knows anything about Hitler, the first thing he did was bury his history, and he took anybody that was like addled, showed any signs of how do I say it, limited capacity,
Yes.
or anything like that. He killed them.
Yes.
And sent them to camps and killed them. And that's how he was.
Yeah.
I will create my history. I will
Right.
control the narrative.
Yeah.
What was the old outer limits? I control the horizontal. I control the vertical.
Yeah, that's right.
And my
that's
reality
right.
is the only one you're getting. I mean, he was a master of manipulation.
Well, it's almost what they say, the victor whoever writes the history.
Because the victor goes the spoils, right? Yeah,
Right.
I know that too.
That's the person that writes the history. The victorious party is the one that writes the history. Doesn't mean it's the truth, but they can write
Right.
it the way they want to make it, and they're thinking, and eventually, it will be believed, because all the people that were around alive when that happened that could disagree and go, "Hey, that didn't happen that way," they'll eventually die.
Right.
So.
Well, what's happening too is that the world has went so hard one way, and there's another section who are going, "No, I don't agree with it." Feel that they're polarized and being attacked, so now they're pushing to the far right.
Right.
So you have two parties who are screaming at each other, and the handful of people in the middle are either saying, "I'm completely out of it," or take the chance of being called a racist or whatever, or anti-whatever. But it's secular. Think about it. Every X amount of few generations, you had like the flappers, and after that, you had all the different stuff, and going into
Right.
to the beatniks, going to the hippies, going to this. Now it's a lot of transgender stuff,
Right.
and
Exactly.
it's just, what can I be what can I be angry about? Which I understand. If I was gay and, I wanted to write to if I could be married, which I'm like, hey, everyone should be able to be married and everybody should be able to be taxed. If they're actually going to tax everybody, let's do it.
Exactly.
The only people right now that are exempt in regards of that kind of thing are mainly the churches and like the government. I don't know if the Amish pay tax. I don't know. Anyway,
I believe they do. I think they do. But they've been. I think they've also there's a lot of stuff that they've been grandfathered in because they've been occupying a certain piece of land for so long.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like everything else. And usually when when you've settled, and I don't know if you've noticed, you get law. The laws accommodate you in your. It's the local laws. How's that? Locally.
Right. Well, and the thing is, it's like they do their thing. They have their law. They have whatever. Mm-hmm. Because they have a common understanding and all that, and they don't push beyond a certain border or beyond a certain acceptable limits that they both agreed on. And that's just a comfortable alliance, for whatever reasons and stuff. But I don't know. I think in the end,
you want me to tell something,
like
Steve? Many, for people that have been around for a little while longer, like I tell everybody, I remember when I was working that people would smoke in the office. People would smoke at their desks. I remember when
smoke in delivery rooms. What are you talking about?
And I remember one time, this had to be maybe in the 80s. Some young guy, he wanted to get sign a petition. This was before they had outlawed smoking, where you didn't have to stand outside it. And I can't remember, it was a petition for something about smoking someplace or something or other. So he comes up to me and he's like, hey, this petition, and this is to prohibit the smoking, blah 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 blah. And I said, okay, will you sign? I said, I'll tell you what, I don't smoke and I agree with you. However, I don't want to take somebody's right away that wants to smoke. And it's like, I agree with you. And, he was like talking about secondhand smoke and, besides this, the thing with the person. I said, yeah, I agree with you. And I don't like people smoking around me and I don't smoke. But at the same time, I don't want to interfere with the person's right to smoke. One thing to me made more sense than the other. And God, I had no idea that eventually, it would slide down, because I remember my workplace that went from, okay, you had to smoke in the cafeteria, and then they partitioned the cafeteria, and then they said, no, you have to go outside, and then it was, no, way out there, you can't stand by the engine. It was like
in the shed down there by the edge of the thing. Yeah,
I saw that whole thing throughout the years, and it was like. People. Let me tell you something. Some people really felt ostracized, by the way, because you were like persona non grata if you were like, you smoke.
Right. Well, and there's this thing that I grew up in a house everybody smoked, which everybody smokes. So basically, I smoked too as a little boy. Breathing that stuff. But it's a thing where that's like you said. It goes in sort of sicklier stuff, and I think that I can just say as of Kentucky. Our tobacco growing is almost gone. They've replaced it with soybeans, which now I'll see what happens. You can make a lot of stuff out of soybeans, like plastics and stuff, but I don't know how much energy you have to expend to get the return. Right. I personally want to see more hemp production because I know it's a very versatile material.
Yeah, probably.
And it can get 3 or 4 different runs. And I am not a hemp guy or user. But I know as of marijuana, which is 2 totally different things, but you could grow 3 or 4 things in a cycle of a year, get more wood pulp or material for cordage and whatnot, less damage on the ground. In fact, it helps the ground, I've heard, as opposed to clear cutting and growing more trees up, clear cutting stuff. Yeah. And it keeps you from having erosion as bad. So I hope to see that happen one day. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff I believe in, but usually no one wants to hear this at a paranormal book signing or a convention.
It's like,
they're like, okay, him dude, just run a book.
Well, it's a lot of the stuff that happens, like what we were talking about that I want to say, for lack of a better word, paranormal and conspiracy theories, and I, like you said, air quotes around the conspiracy theory things that kind of sometimes overlap in one thing or the other. And it's like, I want to say, I don't think, and I'm gonna come down on the millennials here. They just don't have the benefit of having lived longer to have seen the changes that have happened in maybe 40 years, for example.
Well, that's the thing. You have someone that went from, like, say they were alive in the 70s, but they were born in, like, the 1900s. They've seen steam. They've seen going from boats to trains to airplanes in, like, no time. It's got to be maddening, because I just know in the time of, I was a free-range kid. I was, I entertained myself, what my parents worked.
Right.
And I roamed the woods, doing my little stuff, jumping, running around like I was Errol Flynn or somebody, and with a stick and a towel, like I'm Superman, like I'm flying through the woods, and I was okay. I would not dream of just cutting loose a kid now, just because I think the world's changed, or maybe it's just maybe we're just aware of how people are. Right. Which, don't get me wrong, and I know we're kind of off the subject, but I'm a granddad now. I'm about 8 months into it now, and one of the first things I said was to please make sure to get her into stuff like 4-H and things like that. That's kind of connected with nature.
Yeah.
Because kind of keep her off the computer a little bit. Which the computer can be used for great stuff. I write all my books on that. Yeah. But it can suck you in. I had went camping this last weekend, and I had a phone available. Didn't really plan on it, just for emergencies. I think I may have even said, "Hey guys, I'm going camping. I'll talk to y'all later." Just so I would be getting a lot of text messages. But it was great. It was a full moon. Me and my youngest went out there, camped out, made s'mores, real mellow. And I needed it, because sometimes you don't realize how stressed you are just in the modern day. Yeah. And you go out, you kind of reset your clock. There was a lady who said, basically sleeping outside for a month. And it helped kind of reset their clock, because we have an internal clock.
Right, you're sick.
And not everybody, there are just life. There's always something going on, because people, wake up in the middle of the night. I've done it myself. I apologize. My dog's losing his mind.
Don't worry about that. I got it on my own over here.
You know what I'm talking about. Like, you wake up, maybe you just woke up, but you kind of check your phone. Did I get a message? Okay, weird.
Yeah, I know. You're right.
It happens. I've seen older folks sitting in a doctor's office, sitting there playing on their phone or their jitterbug, whatever it was, talking to somebody, texting. That's how it is, and I'll willfully kind of go, whatever it is. Sure was a hot one today, right? Just to try to connect with people, because then people will start talking, and then someone else might chime in. Then you actually have a living, breathing conversation going on between adults and the kids too. Hey, are you ready for school being out? I'm that guy. And because I want to start those conversations, because I think a room full of people not talking to each other is just, it's no good.
But you know what also I've noticed, Steve, and you've probably noticed it, is like when my boys were growing up, this was already the time that they had all the games and stuff, the basic games. But, I would shoot them outside, go play, and they had some friends in the neighborhood, and we had like an enclosed neighborhood. It was like maybe 6 or 7 blocks, and it was like, you guys, everybody lived in that area, in other words. And you know what? Every once in a while, somebody, they had to check in with me, of course. But you know what? There was times where, like one time my son, like he got a gash on his head because he ran through a fence. Another one. People don't want their kids to get hurt, but you got to do that. Okay, they got a scraped knee. Come over here. I'm going to put something and a Band-Aid. Keep going, kid. And parents now, they don't want nothing to happen. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't have wanted something serious. Absolutely not.
Obviously.
But if I have a bunch of boys running around, and then the other kids, and they're here and they're playing hide and go seek or tag or whatever they were playing, like my son, that he didn't see a tube sticking out from a fence, and he ran right through it and scraped basically like a big giant scrape on his scalp. Then he came home, Mom, and he's got blood, and I'm like, okay, I cleaned it out, and that was it, and he was good to go. But parents don't want that.
It's the age everybody wanted to be Evel Knievel. I wanted to be Steve Austin. I did the no when I jump, all that shit. I wanted to be an astronaut just so I could crash and get all that cool gear.
Yeah, it's like, and people do, and I, don't get me wrong, because I feel the same way, but it was one of those things where you got to let your kid, like, let their imagination, because believe it or not, the majority of what was going on amongst them, it was just imagination. I mean, everybody was just seeing a bunch of kids running around, but they had their own thing going on as far as whatever it is that they were, but yeah, and well, let's see the way that turns out. Because I mean, we could do a whole nother show sometimes as far as if you want to go down the rabbit hole of integration with AI and how that's going to affect us, and is that really the direction we want to go into?
And we're just on the cusp of that, touching on like neural pathways being connected with all this stuff, and we're jumping into the 5G now, and I've talked to different people that talk about like super soldier programs, how like anything that we're having now has been in like military probably 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
And at that point now
we're becoming aware of it now,
so
but
right,
I don't
we
know.
wouldn't have had FLIR cameras without military applications.
But you know what's really funny? You remember back in the 90s, there was a movie called Johnny Mnemonic that Keanu Reeves. And when that movie came out, it was strictly sci-fi. You know what I'm saying? It was a great movie, like an action movie, but this whole thing is that this guy is basically a memory stick. His brain is a memory stick, And of course, he's got a bunch of bad guys, and I forgot what you call the Japanese mafia. God, I can't remember what it.
Ukatsu or
whatever that that they're ready to like basically chop his head off for the information he's got in his head. And I'm thinking to myself, man, when you saw that movie, just like Blade Runner, the original one, when it came out, that was like, man, this is really entertaining, great sci-fi, dystopian future.
For me,
and all of a sudden it's like,
for me, that was the only Blade Runner. I was really disappointed in that. We could do a whole show on how disappointed I am on the new Blade Runner, just because of some of the ways it was handled.
Well,
I think Harrison Ford was in it just to give it cred.
Of course, because it's like a good tie-in, I mean, the idea behind it was interesting, but let's go down. A lot of the efforts. I mean, when you look back at it now, not something like this, but a lot of the some of the films, they want to humanize robotics or AI. You understand what I'm saying?
Right. Transhumanism. It's okay. Let's become that.
Of course. Exactly. I mean, yeah. Because let's face it, as human beings, we're very sentimental. We are. I hate to say it, but if we see something that looks like it has some type of sentience,
some emotion. That's what make robots look like us.
Of course.
There's no reason to do that. It's easier to make a thing that doesn't have to have such good balance. Just make it squatter into the ground.
Right. Well,
make it have hands that can look both ways and arms that go both ways. It can do anything it wants to.
Well, in that movie, the one, well, it was a iRobot, the one that the latest version of it, which was the one that Will Smith was in. If you look, and that's based on the original novel by Isaac Asimov, that the older versions of the robots that were being put away in those bins, that they would like, why do these robots all group together in the dark? Basically what they're saying is they're sentient. Okay. Otherwise, why would inanimate objects gather together in the dark, almost like human beings? And,
Right.
And of course, they save humanity at the end of the movie, but whatever. But it's all in that direction. Very cleverly disguised, though.
Right. Well, and who knows what's going to happen, because you got to think about it. What are ghosts? Are they, some sort of collective psychic thing that's in our head? Mm-hmm. I think some of it ties into what your vibrational and your mental, I don't say your mental acuity, but like where your mind's at. Well, you go to English manners, you're going to see like, ladies with long hair and flowing dresses and this and that. You don't see like somebody running around with like a Flavor Flav clock on their chest with like a swatch, and you don't see a lot of 80s ghosts unless it's done in like a comedy. You don't have somebody going, there's not a guy coming out looking like Shaft with a big throw. It's a ghost panel. You don't see that.
But and this is the thing, and kind of like in a roundabout way when we talk about, when you see phantoms, let's say, of boats and trains, okay, that you're thinking, okay, this is an inanimate object, and is it something, residual? Can something inanimate have some type of animus? Like when we start talking robotics, it kind of like something to like think about in your head. Like, is it just an imprint on time of something that happened? Or how can an inanimate object be a ghost of an inanimate object? Like, how does that work?
Well, we're going from, and I don't want to sound PC. It's not even necessarily a Eurocentric, but a 2020 centric mindset. If you go back to Native Americans, they had the animism, the belief that the rock, the water, the birds, the wind, all have a spirit. Kind of like that kind of ties into like I said, my time in Thailand and like in Japan, places like that. Of the, you drop food, don't get it. That's for the hungry ghost. If if before you cut fruit from a tree, you thank the ghost of that tree.
Right.
Everything, and it makes you really, really mindful before you do anything, and you feel there's a consequence because you don't want to have a disrespected ghost on you.
Right.
So sometimes you become a ghost too.
Right, and in other words, respect for even something that you couldn't perceive or see.
Right.
That
right.
belief. But yeah,
right.
I mean,
it's weird, right?
Very weird, but very interesting. As far as I'm concerned, it's like sometimes I'm like, oh man, jeez, this is ridiculous. As far the only problem I have sometimes is when they want to, I'm going to use railroad people into certain ways of thinking and behaving, as in social engineering. That's what I have a problem with. We should all be able to look at things, study them, and make a decision. Hey, that's good or not good, or I'm going to do that or not that. Not be like, when they put the rats in the maze and you kind of make them go a certain path. I do not appreciate that at all. That's not for me. I don't think that's good.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do see that happening, unfortunately, just because of technology.
And humans like order. I mean, if you look at anywhere, roads, the way they're set out, the way houses are set out, the way the houses are even built in very geometrical shapes. You go. I mean, that's straight from like Rome. The reason we have roads in our homes set like we are and all that, it comes from Rome. But even that's the thing. Even if you have somebody trying to find somebody, and they go, well, how do they find me? I only have a little cabin out in the woods, because they have software that can find out just non-natural shape.
Yeah, of course.
Not just heat signatures, but like, if you're going to do it, you need to build into the side of a hill, maybe not south-facing, because they're going to know that you want to be south-facing to get some of the sunlight. You have to do it up differently. You have to go deep enough. I mean, I'm not saying go out and build a bunker.
Right, but people don't realize, they're thinking exactly, they ask themselves exactly that question of what you just said.
Right.
And I personally think that, a lot of times people think, oh, everybody's caught up, like the romanticism of history. And I go, yeah, you know what, considering sometimes that life was very difficult, sometimes brutal, I go, believe it or not, I think especially now in modern times, people are attracted to it because, like you just said, you can be kept attracted. In other words, you were really freer in the sense of, if you wanted to disappear and become another person, you just about could. Okay? Sometimes it worked to your advantage, and other times nobody would ever know that something bad had happened to you.
Right. Well, think about it like this, and I don't mean to be using it all the time, but in like the Middle Ages, you didn't have people jumping off the side of a hill with a parachute or trying. I mean, they might jump into water, but humans only feel alive when they think they're going to die. We've got some weird wiring. We're attracted to death on a certain point, or the fear of, oh my God, I almost died. That's why people love roller coasters. That's why they like haunted houses and all this kind of stuff. There's even places where you have to go in there and you're kind of like locked in. You have to find your way out, or maybe you even have your hands cuffed. There's people that will pay for like adventures where they're abducted and they have to find a way to get out of the house they're abducted in. People are crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a reason there's so much of that, because we're so removed in most culture from that kind of life and death stuff. Yeah. So part of us wants it, which is really screwy. But I agree to a point that something my dad had told me, because my dad came up through the Depression and all that, and I said, look, it's a thing that, the things that, a lot of times the things that you appreciate more is the things that were very hard fought.
Sure.
And that you can lose.
Of course.
That's why sometimes people don't appreciate too late. Like if you have a mom or an aunt or somebody, I wish I'd had spoke when I was a little boy and asked my grandpa or my grandma rather, tell me about the earliest memories that you got. What was the first thing you did? What was the first real scare you had? What was the first candy you had? What was candy like when you were a kid? Guarantee it's going to be a totally different thing that we got now.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Just to have that bit of knowledge. That's as close as you're going to get, unless you believe in reincarnation.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That there's that definitely, I think that we romanticize. It's almost like a quid pro quo. Life was more, I don't want to say dangerous, but it was more of a day-to-day existence sometimes. Because even if you were wealthy, you could still contract fever and a lot of diseases that now don't kill you. You could still die from that. But at the same time, they were more free in the sense of there was, I don't want to say this, how can I say it? This control over the individual. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Well, we're so integrated and insular in regards of even people that kind of are on the fringes. Let's say somebody who, and this is not a negative because I think it's a great idea to have solar, and if you can have a hydroelectric power and be off the grid, rock on. But, God forbid something goes down, you can go ahead and drive to a hospital. You can go ahead and get where there's a phone and go, hey, I need an ambulance out here, or I need whatever, somebody's trying to break in. And,
911, help.
Right. It's like, I'm making my own island, but, I'm still right here in the middle of the street. Across from me, I can see you. This is my country now. It doesn't quite work that way. So, yeah. So, but that's why I think that things, again, back to the paranormal, those things, I think, give a little solidity and a finality to things. Because, like you said, you don't appreciate stuff. If you don't realize there's an end date, you know what I'm saying? Right. If you don't go, oh, this will end. Oh, they're going to stop serving, cheese fries or whatever the heck you want to enjoy to eat. You might go, I'll get them next week. And say, oh, they're going out tomorrow?
Right. Oh my God.
Give me 2 or 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I got to have them now. That's the biggest thing, like people do. You ever seen the stores, like, that's just the name of it, is going out of
oh, yeah, and all of a sudden you've
and
never been there before, but then all of a sudden you're like,
right, and it's the thing. Oh, we're closing next week, and they're selling stuff really, quick, and then come back. So I thought you're closing. Oh, we got an extension.
Right.
But we're going to close then. So there it is.
Yes, exactly.
It's a good hustle.
Yeah, there's something that hooks us, that does something to our brains as like, oh, you mean that won't be available? Yeah, that's a typical human nature things, and God knows that there's a lot of
limited edition that's very attractive and alluring.
Yeah, of course.
Into people.
Of course. Somebody that understands marketing really well knows that about human nature.
Right. Well, and I think too, and I know I keep going back to the paranormal, but that's sort of like a ghost or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if it's a ghost or what it is, but it's an energy or an entity or some sort of seemingly sentient interaction. Mm-hmm. It's there and then it's gone. It's not like, well, we're going to go down the street. There's that crazy Wilkins ghost again, screaming up and down the block. I think I remember everything when I was a kid. That's old news. But it's almost like a shooting star, and you see this, and it's like, what did I experience? That was a sort of a one-time thing, and you feel very special in a way. Everybody wants to feel special. And I think that's what draws certain people to certain careers, certain vocations and interests and hobbies. Your dad might have been a stamp collector, and I guarantee he has this one that says, ain't nobody got this one. It's mine. This is the only one out there, or, you know, whatever. And everybody has their little ghost hunting spots or their little investigators. Well, just like me, I'm the Western Kentucky guy. You know, and I mean, I could tell you a lot about East Kentucky too, but everybody talks about Waverly. Everybody talks about these places because they're cool.
Right.
But very few people know outside of my pond here. They don't know about it. They go, I've never even heard of this.
Right.
Well, come on down.
But
I'm that guy.
I'm going to tell you something else, though, Steve, that I've noticed. Because, you know, you were talking about nobody sees a 1980s ghost. Okay. I think, I'm pretty certain, a lot of times people, especially in shows, and people kind of stay away from that because of fear of getting sued, especially if that person or family, you know, somebody there could say even though supposedly when somebody dies, that's it, you know, or it's been published in the newspaper, you're off the hook legally. But I think a lot of people rather stay when it comes to the ghost hunting or the paranormal or stuff like that, with stuff that's like 100 years ago. Yeah. Like that, not only is that person dead, but anybody associated with it is long gone. Okay.
It's just, I'm waiting. I want to have my head, you know, in a jar long enough to see this, like on Futurama. I wanted to go, outbreak of moonwalking ghost. You know, electric boogaloo cast was haunting downtown New York. Yes, I want to see that.
Yeah. You know, and because you know, you speak to, I'm telling you, there's, because if you look at some shows or some, it's like you said, you're going to tell me that no phantoms, no ghosts, no haunting, no restless spirits, like you said, from the 1980s, the 1990s, the 1970s. God knows people still did stupid stuff, you know, or died unexpectedly or under violent circumstances.
Right. You know, why isn't Charlie Manson haunting the penitentiary or the
man, you would think
we've seen
that,
him at the Fall Ranch.
Yes.
Right? Well, you know, you'll hear about, like the Rose Red movie, which I loved. You know, have like the flapper ghost and the gin, you know, the gin joints, but that's kind of sexy and cool. Nobody wants to, you know, the old guy down the street is like, how'd you know it was Mr. Higgins? Well, he was talking about his gout, you know, oh, I've got gout. No one wants to see that. That's not sexy. That's not fun.
No. Well, I'm going to give you a perfect example that you mentioned, Manson, you know, when they had the Tate LaBianca murders, you know, that they basically raised the house where it was committed, and they even renumbered it. And one time I was speaking
they did the same thing with Amityville house.
Right, yeah, they're like, and I spoke to Dave Oman, who has a house like right down the street on Cielo Drive, and he kind of told me, Marlene, I can talk about certain things, but in other words, I can talk about what happens in my house, but I cannot talk about anything because legally, you know, not only him, anybody, in other words, somebody's going to say, hey, you know what? You're making our street look bad or my house look bad, or, you know. So I think that's why people are more careful with more recent stuff, unless it's something that involves a nobody, you know, and then you'll have some people talk about it, and even then they're very circumspect about describing certain things or the names, etc. You know, but if it's 100 years ago, it's like, who cares? Not only is that person dead, everybody around that surrounds that event is long gone.
Right. Well, it also depends on what region of the country you're in.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a place, okay, here's the thing. I know the South. You know, I identify as a Southerner. Mm-hmm. That's not against anybody, but I'm a Southerner. It's just, man, dude, I couldn't wash it off me if I wanted to. It's there. And that's okay. There's good things here and there's bad things. But I focus on the positive. The thing is that a lot of times in the South, you talk about after Civil War, a lot of stuff was just razed. Stuff was just decimated. But sometimes all we have is our name and maybe a little bit of culture and little things. We hold to that.
Mm-hmm.
And people go, well, you know, my granddaddy come to this town, and we've lived here for 6, 7 generations. You know, I don't want it to be turned into a freak show, you know, if there's ghosts and people coming in, making fun, being disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
I get that.
Absolutely.
But, you know, so it's a double-edged sword, and I have to be mindful, because me, as a person who investigates, thinks it would be great to have ghost tours here. I think it would help a lot with the revenue. But let's say in 100 years, you know, I had a son that passed. You know, and there's not been anybody reporting seeing anything like that. Seeing them, like, walking around outside playing kickball or something, which he'd like to do. But I don't know if in because in 100 years I'm dead anyway. I guess it won't matter who's a ghost.
It won't.
But, because that's what I tell everybody. I said, and it makes my kids insane. I said, look, this whole conversation we're having is going to be a memory. In fact, it already is a memory in 30 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
So just hold to it, take away. He's just like, why do you talk like that? And I said, I'm not trying to be morbid. It's just eventually we're going to be a stone that you visit. That's how it is. And I know it sounds like I'm a really dark guy, and I'm not. But I've lost a lot of people. A lot of my people, what's the, there's a record that says, everybody I know is, dead, or, all my friends are dead.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things. You get to a certain age.
Right.
And most of your friends and connections are gone. That's why old folks, heck, I do it myself, watch like series, like Kolchak and things like that. And
right.
I go to when I was happy as a little boy,
Sure.
So that's just the nature of people. But yeah, I'd be curious to sort of see where that goes in the next X amount of years. And one of the things that I was working on, because we were touching on sci-fi, I probably should throw this up. I am working on a collection of short stories.
Oh, that's right.
I'm about half through it.
Okay.
And it touches on anything from folklore. It touches on things like fairies, like old school fairies, the mean ones.
Right. Yeah. Not the Tinkerbell type.
Right. Not that Disney crap. Old school. Grimm's fairy tale stuff. Mm-hmm. And touches on sci-fi, and it touches on a little bit of psychological stuff, a little bit of a thriller vibe to it. But what's great is, they might be 3 or 4 pages long. It might be 6 or 7 pages long. But, each one is like a different little mini book in itself. So I just wanted to...
When do you think you're going to be putting that out? This year or next year?
Well, it's probably going to be... it's bigger than the Great Mud Flood conspiracy book. Mm-hmm. It's probably going to be 100-ish pages. I'm not looking to do a 200 or 300 page book right now.
Right. Just
because between that and my little podcast and stuff I do.
Right.
But we'll see how it goes. Hopefully I'm hoping, basically book 4 of the Hauntings series is written. That's the follow-up to the penitentiary book. Mm-hmm. Tentatively, Kentucky State Penitentiary, or Hauntings of Kentucky State Penitentiary Part 2, Habitual Hauntings. So that is basically written, and I'm going to do final edits and release that sometime this coming year.
Okay.
So what I might do is release that. I will either release that first, or the short stories book first, in the middle, like late spring to summer, because everybody wants to read a book over summer, and then I would want to release one right around Halloween. Yeah. Like maybe the 1st of October. That way people can get it ready. And
the magic month for paranormal stuff. Yeah.
I'm telling you, that's when people want me, because I will go to newspapers, I will go to television, I will go to anybody will damn listen to me. And which I am actually working on a PowerPoint for touching on how I come to writing and the paranormal. And there's a place called Willard Library in Evansville, Indiana, which I spent a lot of time as a kid. Everything for me revolves around libraries. I'm very much a supporter of literature and books and the arts. Absolutely. And I think all that's as important as, sports and all these other things. If you don't have art, what do you have? Mm-hmm. But anyway, and this is actually a very haunted library. If you punch in Willard Library,
I got to look that up. Willard Library, okay.
Willard Library, like the little rat, Willard.
Yes, I remember Willard. There's some people going out there going, huh? Don't worry, it's a long story.
Willard Library, and if you look in that,
Michael Jackson sang the theme song. Okay, but I'm sorry, keep going.
But what I'm saying is, so yours is as nostalgic as I am. But they have a woman called the Gray Lady, and she was one of the previous owners, and they've seen her all over. They've got video stuff of her moving and like appearing and disappearing. I'm getting to do my first PowerPoint there, October 28th, I think. So a few days before Halloween, so it ties in real well.
Okay.
And I'm going to do that, and hopefully after that, I'm going to try to sell a few books, and I'm hoping will let me do a little investigation there before I leave.
That would
So
be
we'll see
great.
what happens.
That would be fantastic.
Right. I'm like excited. So
that.
that's,
You know,
that's
what
kind
can
of
I
what I got
say?
going on. You know,
I'm going back to the original Ghostbuster, that library scene. That, you know, that's when everybody talks to me about a haunted library.
Like
you know.
Oh, it all goes back to Ghostbusters, doesn't it? But I was going to say, I probably should have mentioned it earlier on the show. SteveEAsher.com is my webpage, and that has links to all my books.
Yes.
It has links to my House of Asher podcast, which you can see on like YouTube, and you know, I didn't know if you wanted to throw out any station names or not, but you can check that out. You can check out some of my investigations.
Yeah, and I'm going to have the credit. I'm going to have a link in the credits of the show, Steve, as far as for anybody also.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
But,
absolutely. No,
what do you want to talk about now?
Well, I'm gonna. You know what? I'm gonna have to. Let me tell you something. I'm gonna have to go ahead and just, you know, I'm gonna do my little monologue at the end because I've got to take. Believe it or not, day after tomorrow, I gotta go all the way up to South Carolina. I'm gonna have to do like a 3-day cannonball run up to South Carolina because my husband.
Quality movie, by the way.
Huh?
That was actually a quality movie. I really enjoyed Cannonball.
Yeah, I was going to say, not everybody understands or knows what the reference is to that.
Right.
Up to South Carolina to pick up some birds. But I'm sorry, go ahead. What?
No, I was just going to tell you, for the longest time, my screen saver was Captain Chaos, because I identify with that guy. I feel I'm handling Dom DeLuise's character half the time.
God, do you remember? God, that was so funny. They did a bunch of movies together. It was great. And it was like, I don't know, I want to say it was like funny, harmless, like, you know.
Well, I mean, it was mildly sexist in a funny way.
Yeah.
It was mildly racist in a funny way. It was, and, you know, Buford T. Justice was my dad, man. That character with a little thin mustache and smoking his little cigarettes, that was my old man.
Really?
An old Southern cop. Yeah, I swear to God. And my dad loved it. And I never understood why. Because it was just like him. He was such a narcissist.
Well, let me tell you something. Jackie Gleason did such. He brought that character to life. Like, he was the villain, but you actually really liked him. You know.
And more than that, I mean, you know, he was like a big UFO nut, right?
Yeah, I'd heard of that. Yes. Nobody knows that much about Jackie Gleason, but yeah, because you know he lived a lot. He had a home down here in South Florida, so he lived. Yeah. So And it's incredible, some of the people that actually believed in that before. We got to talk about that. You got to come back and we got to do another show about UFOs
all
and
kinds
stuff
of crazy.
like that.
There's so much, and people don't realize there's so much weird UFO stuff in the South. There's an area I live in. There's the land between the lakes, which people have reported all kinds of creatures. Again, Bigfoot, dogmen, reptilian-type creatures. It goes all the way, you know, kind of up to around Louisville and Lexington, and you know all that hauntings in there, down and around Allingsville, Kentucky, which had like the Great Mud Flood and had all kinds of different weird, like the Stanford, Kentucky UFO, very few people know about. Wow. The Kelly, Kentucky UFO invasion of all things.
I've never heard of that.
On the ground.
We got to talk about that. I've never heard of that.
I'm telling you, that's what I love. It's so fun. It's sort of like my grandbaby. Like I go, you know, just trying different stuff. Like, here, try this, a sweet potato, and the eyes get real big and go, no, yeah, it's good stuff right here. Boom, dig that. That's what this is so fun. Yeah, because I get to turn people on to new stuff. Yeah.
Because let me tell you something. Did you see that Stanton Friedman? He passed away a couple of weeks ago. I want to say already.
Yeah, I hate that.
He passed away.
I hate that.
But you know what? One of the things about, and I'm not the most. I mean, I know about. I'm not that well informed about UFOs as far as all these cases. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there. But, you know, one of the things that gets to me is the theory that a lot of the stuff that's out there is in truth misinformation. In other words, this, you know, because everybody's always hung up on, you know, the government's always tried to suppress any type of accurate UFO information. But then there's the other school that says, yeah, but also part of it was done on purpose, like to spread misinformation obliquely, you know, but that there was a purpose to it. And I'm like, oh man, this can get complicated. It's like, what?
I was saying, I've got one that I can lay on you, and you may have heard it.
Which one?
And if not, I won't talk too much about it, and we'll save it for the next show.
Go ahead.
Did you hear anything about America, Russia? I don't know if England did or not, but they had a program where they took special needs kids, and I don't know if they were terminal or what, but anyway, like where they had crashes and they found little bodies and stuff, that supposedly they sacrificed to these special needs kids to continue the myth or the belief that there were actual aliens. There are some people that say, like the Dirk Glock, the Nazi bill and all that.
Right.
All this stuff supposedly was engineered from something, but we never had physical contact with aliens. We built that whole mythos up. So if they wanted to kidnap somebody, abduct somebody, do experimentations with somebody, they could. I
had not heard of that. That's pretty horrendous to think of that.
It's extremely hardcore, and it really sickens me. Obviously, having special needs kids and stuff, I take it to heart.
Yes.
But think about it. We had the Tulupi? I'm going to say the wrong word. Mississippi. The one.
Right.
Sounds like Tupelo. There it is. Tupelo, Mississippi, where they were guys were coming in as African Americans, and they were not treating their syphilis.
Yes, that's
and
right.
And actually released mosquitoes that were infected with syphilis.
Right. Yes.
And to see like that whole thing of going, well, they're black. Well, maybe they have a stronger resistance. They're not quite human. And this was like not that within the century.
Well,
this last century.
There was part of the research of one of my books was that if you were a prisoner, especially if you were like a longer sentence, they basically would do you could take some time off your sentence if you agreed to basically make yourself a guinea pig for certain drugs.
Right. A lot of LSD, early LSD.
But other stuff, sometimes other obscure stuff, like stuff like we don't, and it's surprising. And, it's almost like, chances are this is not going to turn out good, but what do you got to lose? You've got a 30-year sentence. Maybe you want to make it and, 25.
You signed the paper.
Yeah.
You knew what was up. You're probably going to die here anyway. So now why don't you roll the dice? Yeah,
exactly. It was usually, like I said, for prisoners that had longer sentences, which was like, you know what? You might actually be able to. And one of the stories I was reading, which was actually, it was a guy that, I did the case, the story because he had killed his wife or his girlfriend, I can't remember now. And he agreed to participate. It was like a year-long study, supposedly. And all he got was all they took was, I want to say, 1 year off his sentence. It was like he had a 30-year sentence, and they took it. It was like minimal. It was like, oh my God, is this what you agreed to? Wow, yeah.
Right. Well, and it's what was they say the most dangerous words to hear? We're here for the government, and we want to help. I know it's kind of a jaded vibe, but
well, you know what? I think a lot of people now are looking back, and part of people I think is like, man, were we being fooled all this time? Or are we being fooled now into thinking that, it's like, where does this all start becoming a big giant production, for the benefit of making people think that things are a certain way when they're not?
In 100 years, when they actually release if they release the JFK stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, throw that if in there quick.
You know what I mean? Maybe we'll know more what happened. I think there's a whole covert history of America that, just from the military standpoint, we'll never know.
I know. You look at some of this stuff and you're thinking, okay, if this is kind of squeezing out now, how much more, how dark and deep is this abyss of stuff?
Right.
Like, this is bad. It's like, do I really want to know how bad this of things that have been done? And it's like, what? Scary
there was a thing in law enforcement and especially in the prison systems, baiting. And I don't mean baiting like they put something to get you in trouble. Mm-hmm. Sometimes somebody would sacrifice something, like say if they're in their cell and they'll have like a dope or something, and they'll have like a stack of stamps. They're not supposed to have more than X amount of stamps at a time, or they're not supposed to have X amount of food, at one time, or paperwork because it's a fire hazard, or cigarettes.
Right.
And they'll go, and you make it relatively quick for them to find it. And go, whoop, look at that. You got 6 cartons of cigarettes. It's not on my thing. Well, dang, you got me, you boss, But you don't stop. You keep going. Rookies would stop, but a lot of times if you dig more, it's like, man, thought you might quit there because
Yeah, I gave you something. Aren't you happy now? Be on your way.
Right. Yeah. You can go down there and show it to your captain. You get a little attaboy.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it works.
No, yeah, that. As a matter of fact, I mean, I'm gonna go to South Florida that was very famous for the drug trade. That they were saying, and again, this is stuff that you hear and you don't know how much of it is true and how much of it is that a lot of the big drug, when they would seize these huge shipments of drugs, that basically this was prearranged. Like, okay, we'll give you a big drug bust, here.
Right.
And they had a bunch of other stuff, that was actually making it through. But the optics of it, was great. And then you're thinking, man, that's a horrible way of thinking. That.
Well, I know I had guys that were in there, and see, what happens is they have a tendency, which is so kind of dumb. It's like they'll say you have a circle, so you have 5 men who are head of a crime family. Mm-hmm. Well, they'll take those guys and say, well, I'm going to put one in New York, I'm going to put one in California, I'm going to put one in Florida, I'm going to put one up in Colorado. Mm-hmm. Basically, you're throwing water on a grease fire because each one of those little guys are starting a new little syndicate.
Right.
And all you did was push those guys out into fresh territories. Right. So, sorry, they're going nuts.
That's okay.
But yeah, I mean, so it and I've talked to these guys. Some of these guys, that's in there for life, they don't care.
Yeah, and that's exactly sometimes when you hear the truth about certain things that, like you said, is like,
right.
about how much worse can they get than this,
Well, I've heard so much, look, we, like, you think of a criminal. Our sons generally don't go into the business. This ain't a godfather. It's a godfather to the point of you want them to do better, but it's like, hey, guess what? You get to be a lawyer because we need lawyers to represent us. Hey, guess what? You're going to go into politics. Mm-hmm. You're going to kind of be tight. You're going to work your way into the police force. Okay, guess what? You're going to go be trained in the military because we need paramilitary guys to run hits. Mm-hmm. They're everywhere in everything.
Yes.
So it ain't just West Side Story guys.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
It's a cartoon that people put out because the reality of it's so heavy.
Oh, absolutely, and it is heavy. Okay, you got to come back, Steve. I'm gonna go ahead and it'll be 5 hours later and I'll be talking to you because there's so much that I could talk to you about. Don't worry, I'm gonna be recontacting you. So you can come back.
It's on.
We're gonna do the UFO conspiracy and whatever show. And let's go down the rabbit hole. That's the show that you and me are gonna do. God knows.
That sounds great.
There's plenty to talk about.
Deep, dark conspiracy time.
Okay. You heard it. He's committed. He's saying he's going to come back and we're going to talk about that. Yay.
Yay.
Okay, darling. Thank you so much, Steve. It has been wonderful to speak to you again.
Hey, absolutely. And like I said, just anytime you want to talk, let me know. I'm hoping to get a little bit more stuff out, because like I said, it's not been that long ago since I released the books, but it's just always trying to get new information, get new stories, get new things like that. And because like I said, there's a guy named Mark Davowski or something. He's one of the big writers on like stuff like Kolchak and a lot of those early 70s things. And he was like a big writer, and it has a lot to do with the settings and how the sets were.
Right.
I'm actually trying to talk to him and get some more information from him because you know me, I'm a huge Kolchak nut.
Yeah, I remember, God, it was every Friday.
Yeah, but so yeah, I mean, if there's any time somebody you've heard like on my show, because like I said, some people will just like don't give a shit and like will clip your show. Like if they know you're having somebody on next week, they'll try to clip again the week before. But especially for somebody I've had on and stuff that you kind of feel would be a good guest, let me know.
Sure.
I try not to make it a lot about my show because I didn't know how it was through wherever you go through.
No, that's not a problem. Absolutely not. No.
Okay. Could you do me a favor then?
Sure.
I'm carried through like a thing called Paranormal UK radio that's out
Right.
of England, and they're actually like the bigger thing that carries me. I just didn't mention it because I didn't want to step on toes. I didn't want to know if
No,
it was
no, no,
okay to
no, no.
say.
Of course not. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, look, then I'm gonna go because I'm old and I gotta pee.
Okay, take care.
So I don't think you want to take that journey with me. All right,
No,
you
I
be good.
don't.
Bye bye.
Bye bye, Steve. Take care. Oh my God, he's funny. Oh my God, he's hilarious. He's a great storyteller. He's a really great storyteller. He's got a lot of stories, and it's true, man. He tells me about certain things. And you know what? I guess I've fallen victim to what everybody else does, that there's certain stories or part of the country that all the paranormal shows visit, and it's the same story and over. So all of a sudden when somebody starts talking about this other place or this haunting or this UFO sighting, you're like, what is that? I never heard of that. And that tells you how much certain stories are recycled over and over again, that you're kind of oblivious to all these uh, events that parallel, or sometimes are even more interesting than the one that all the shows kind of either they do it and then maybe 2 years later another one will revive it, or and you're like, that's why when he tells me certain things, I'm like, I've never heard of that. And yeah, but yeah, he's a great storyteller. He's very interesting. You could tell he's a really good researcher. Plus, he has his own personal experiences, both as when he was doing corrections and his own paranormal investigations. It's like well-rounded storyteller. Because there's a lot of storytellers that I call armchair storytellers. They really have never been out there, especially when we're talking the paranormal. They just do a lot of research, but they've never been out there in the dark, scary house, or like what he was at that what farm, old farmhouse, old school kind of thing. A lot of residual stuff. But yeah, definitely, guys. I'm gonna have a link to Steve's website if you want to check out his books. Also, he does have a podcast show that he releases on YouTube and I believe Spreaker as well. He's got a lot of interesting guests, and he knows his stuff. Plus, busy guy, because he's put out 2 books and he's got others already in the pipeline. So, but believe me, he's got a lot of food for, to produce as far as, and he's a very good storyteller. I've read his books. Besides when we talk, I've read his work, and he's a very, very good, interesting storyteller. But again, guys, I love, like I said, hearing these stories that I never heard before. And this is going out to my true believers. And I'm going to repeat it, and I've mentioned it before. This is why I love to get stories from people about the personal experiences, stuff that's retold. Doesn't have to be even a ghost story. It could just be something unusual. Maybe something's been retold in your family. It could have been once. It could have been something that was cited several times. Something weird. It doesn't have to be. It could be a cryptid sighting, or what he was describing about that piece of land that they was thinking that maybe there was like a dogman type of thing. I mean, if you listen to the story, the person never actually saw what it was, but based on what happened with the dog, and then what happened to the truck, or that what he heard, there's a lot of things that sometimes you don't have an actual sighting, but then when you say, okay, well, if I discount this and this, like what was that? Very interesting stuff. So again, my true believers, reach out to me. Email me at marley@miamighostchronicles.com. You can visit miamighostchronicles.com as well for links, or to whatever the case might be, if you want to submit a story. However you want to retell it. If you've got a lot of stuff, I'm willing to interview you. I'll set up a show just for you. Doesn't have to be long. Don't be shy. In other words, my point being that This show is not only to interview authors or paranormal investigators in the sense of people that belong to a paranormal group. I would love to interview regular people. If you want to talk about your experiences or stories that you have, some people are storytellers. They have their own personal experiences, and then they have these stories that they've heard from family and from friends, and they've got. I want to interview you. This is not only. So again, I don't care if you could tell me, well, you know what, I've never done this before, I've never told these stories before, or I'm not a paranormal. I don't care. And again, and that's another thing, when you see these stories and these shows, that things are sometimes they're tied up. Either they've done their research, which is great, and in other words, they give a history, or they know who the ghost was, or why the ghost is haunting, or and then they have a resolution. This happened. I don't need that. Sometimes things happen because, by the way, I've gotten a lot of stories along the years where people move in or have this experience and they really don't know the history or the reason behind it. Okay. And then they never have a resolution. I've had people that said, well, I was living at this place, this stuff happened, and eventually it got resolved because we moved out. In other words, there was no exorcism, there was no showdown with the supernatural, and it stopped. Basically it got resolved because sometimes for the obvious reason, which was the family didn't want to put up with what was going on, but sometimes for other practical reasons, they move out and they never find out what happened, why did that happen, So again, it doesn't have to be one of these stories totally with everything explained. Just I want to hear what happened. And again, sometimes it's stuff that you can say, I remember that my grandmother would say that when she was growing up out in the fields, they would see this guy walking around with his head under his arm. I don't care. God knows. Nobody probably knows what the history, if it was an urban myth, why would somebody see an apparition like that, but I don't care. Just tell me, what was that story that you heard retold in your family that your grandmother said or everybody knew? I'm good with that. So again, guys, thank you so very much for being part of my audience. Thank you so much for coming back every week and listening to a new show. And again, don't forget to subscribe, like the videos or the podcast so you get notified when I release new ones. And I look forward to seeing you guys again. Take care.